Chapter 629. Song Enya flew into a rage out of humiliation. Just as she was about to step forward again, she was stopped by a bodyguard who appeared just in time. Bali's security was in place. After all, they had to take care of the guests' personal safety and privacy. Hence, under the bodyguard's obstruction, Song Enya could only watch as Yun Shirshir was escorted onto the cruise ship. The Bali Western restaurant was located on Hushin Island, and the only way to get there was via a cruise ship. Unlike the cruise ships on the lake, this one was privately owned by the Bali Western restaurant, so it was much more luxurious than the ordinary cruise ships. Hence, when Yun Shirshir boarded the cruise ship under the guidance of the waiter, it immediately attracted the exclamations of those who were standing at the harbor overlooking the scenery. For a moment, there were discussions of jealousy, amazement, and envy. Oh God, is that the Bali Western restaurant's private cruise ship? Oh my God, it's so luxurious. Isn't it? I heard that this cruise ship cost a fortune. Oh God, Bali, that's my dream. Yun Shirshir stood in front of the railing as the cruise ship started moving. It slowly left the harbor and headed toward Hushin Island. She lowered her head and looked at the waves that kept rising. The bright starlight on the cruise ship reflected on the lake's surface, making it a beautiful sight. The silver moon on the horizon was like a hook standing on the deck. Yun Shirshir hugged her shoulders and could not help feeling a little chilly. The waiter considerately put a jacket on her. Yun Shirshir thanked him politely, but even with the jacket, she did not feel cold. Her heart was still cold, though. The Muse are the richest family in the capital. How can Grandpa Mu allow an actress to marry into his family? If you want to climb the social ladder of the Muse, go back and buy a pillow. Even your dreams are more realistic than this. Do you really think that Brother Mu likes you from the bottom of his heart? He's just playing with you. Do you really think that you can climb up the social ladder and marry into a rich family in a dignified manner? In this day and age, is it so justifiable to be a third party and interfere in someone else's marriage? Third party? Yun Shirshir's lips curled into a cold smile. What a joke. How did she become the third party? Everything that Mu Wanru originally had belonged to her. Mu Wanru was the real third party, wasn't she? She took away the token that her mothers left for her, took away her identity, took away her family. She had taken away her fiancé. Isn't the third party Mu Wanru? How did it become her? She of the nights to two, of course, of the night, two of the night, to the winds to lift her messy hair and straighten her back to it. Well, what Mu Wanru had should have belonged to her. Since that was the case, then she would take back everything that originally belonged to her, even if she didn't care for all of this. The of Yuns. Of. Thinking of Mu Wanru's disgusting face, Yun Shirshir felt disgusted from the bottom of her heart. The crimes and grievances that she had to bear for more than 10 years were all in her heart. She swore that she would take back everything that originally belonged to her. The cruise ship soon sailed to the harbor of the island. There were already people waiting for them at the harbor, standing in a row. Chapter 630. There was only one private room in the restaurant. The huge private room was at least 300 square meters. When the waiter led Yun Shirshir into the private room, she was greeted by the extremely luxurious decorations. Just the beautiful and resplendent crystal chandelier alone was enough to tell that it was expensive. Yun Shirshir walked to the table and saw exquisite cutlery on the table. She picked up the chopsticks and saw that they were made of jade. They were even inlaid with diamonds and engraved with her name. Yunshishi, it was so luxurious that it made one speechless. No wonder it was rumored that a couple's set meal at the Bali restaurant was worth tens of millions. Even every detail was exquisite and luxurious. She looked around but did not see Muyaja. Yun Shirshir turned around and asked curiously, "Who made the reservation? Why don't I see him?" She could not help but feel suspicious. What was Muyaja trying to do? He brought her here, but did not see him. The waiters looked at each other, but they smiled without saying anything. Yun Shirshir saw that they were pretending to be mysterious. She raised her eyebrows slightly and decided not to think about it. She walked around the private room alone and accidentally found that there was an observation deck in the private room. Yun Shirshir could not help but be attracted by the Hubble Space Telescope on the observation deck. "Is this a telescope?" Yun Shirshir pointed at the telescope and asked. She didn't know much about astronomy, so she wasn't sure if this was a real telescope. The waiter behind her smiled and said, "Yes, I heard that there will be a meteor shower tonight. Miss Yun, do you want to take a look?" "Sure." Yun Shirshir gladly agreed. She was quite interested in this telescope. Therefore, she walked to the telescope, and the waiter quickly adjusted it for her. Yun Shirshir clumsily looked through the telescope and saw the beautiful starry sky. Incredible! Usually when looking up at the starry sky, one could only see the scattered stars in the night sky. However, through the telescope, one could see that these stars were not of the same size. Some stars were very small as a grain of sand. However, some of the stars were very large. They were either blue or orange in color. Most of them were like diamonds embedded in the night sky, shining brightly and very charming. The stars contrasted with each other and came into view like a beautiful starry sky. It was so beautiful that it was suffocating. Yun Shirshir could not help but be fascinated by it. It was no wonder that many astronomy enthusiasts were fascinated by astronomy. Indeed, a starry sky like this could not help but be fascinated. Yun Shirshir was in a daze and did not notice that the waiter behind her had already left the private room. She stared at the stars in the sky in a trance. Suddenly, a bright and dazzling shooting star flashed across the camera lens. Fast, very fast. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared without a trace. Alas, Yun Shirshir was still unable to contain her excitement. It was as if this was the first time in her life that she had seen a meteor. Yun Shirshir could not help but exclaim. She looked up and said excitedly, "I saw a meteor." Turning around, Yun Shirshir wanted to announce the news excitedly, but she bumped into a warm and firm chest. Her forehead hurt a little. Chapter 631. Her gaze could not help but be drawn to the exquisite diamond on the pendant. It was meticulously carved into the shape of a shooting star. At first glance, it was as eye-catching as a shooting star. Yun Shirshir looked up in shock. Muyaja had unknowingly appeared behind her. He was wearing a black shirt and had smooth and neat black hair. On his handsome face, a pair of deep and mesmerizing eyes were quietly fixed on her. In his eyes, there was a gentleness that had never been seen from him, who had always been arrogant and cold. This rare gentleness seemed to be able to melt the coldest glacier in the world. Yun Shirshir was shocked. Could the shooting star that had flashed across the camera just now be this diamond necklace? She knew that everything that had happened tonight was probably a so-called surprise that this man had specially arranged. But what surprised her was that she did not think that this man would waste his time on a date. From what she knew, his time should be very precious. He was in charge of the huge Dishing financial group and should be very busy every day. But even though she was somewhat mentally prepared, she still did not expect that he would have prepared all this for her. For a moment, she was a little confused. Could it be that he knew that he had gone too far last night? So he had prepared this mysterious date to create a surprise for her and bridge the gap between them because of what had happened last night? What she didn't know was how arrogant this man was. She was his first woman. She was also the woman that he was willing to spend time and effort to pamper. He had never put so much effort into dating before. However, this was his first time doing so. Although he had consulted Min Yu's opinion on many aspects of this date, he still did not know how to guess a woman's thoughts. What did she like? What did she not like? He had no idea. He could only rely on Min Yu's suggestions and slowly figure it out. Mu Yaja lowered his head to look at her. His gaze landed on her and saw that her beautiful peach blossom eyes were staring at the diamond pendant dangling in front of her in surprise. This man had meticulously prepared all this. Could it be that he felt guilty about what had happened last night? Was that why he did all this to make up for it? Yun Shirshir cursed in her heart. From time to time, she would raise the corners of her eyes slightly to size up Mu Yaja's expression. You like it? He opened his mouth slightly, his voice clear and deep. Yun Shirshir did not say anything. She looked at him with anger in her eyes. She thought about how bad this man was yesterday. Seeing him, her heart was filled with anger. However, her gaze once again fell on this almost suffocatingly beautiful pendant. Even though she tried her best to maintain the cold curve of her lips, she still lightly curved her lips because of this unexpected surprise. Mu Yaja looked at the gentle light in her eyes. She probably liked this surprise. Women should have lost their resistance to such surprises. Therefore, he held her shoulders and turned her around, wanting to put the diamond pendant on her neck. Yun Shirshir suddenly broke free from his grasp. With his closeness, her face quickly regained its indifference. In his eyes, she was still angry with him. You don't like it? Mu Yaja asked in a deep voice, as if he was asking for her opinion. Yun Shirshir glanced sideways at the pendant lying in his palm, but she shook her head coldly. Chapter 632. How could he not see her stubbornness and going against her will? This woman was clearly still angry at him. Looking at her eyes just now, it was clear that she really liked this pendant. She was clearly throwing a tantrum with him. Mu Yaja's lips curled into a playful smile. So he said, "If you don't like it, I'll throw it away." After saying this, without waiting for her to react, Mu Yaja strode to the railing of the observation deck and forcefully threw the pendant into the lake. The observation deck was very close to the lake. The strength in his hand naturally could not be underestimated. With one throw, the pendant disappeared without a trace. Yun Shirshir turned her eyes and just happened to see his action. Her heart fiercely trembled, and then she could not care about maintaining the reserved expression on her face. She anxiously walked to his side and looked in the direction he had thrown the pendant, but she could not see it. Her heart was filled with anger. Yun Shirshir angrily bit her lips and turned around to forcefully push him. "What are you doing? HM, what's wrong with me?" Mu Yaja looked at her with an innocent face, as if he was confused and did not understand the situation. "Why are you randomly throwing the pendant that you gave me into the lake? Is it very interesting?" Yun Shirshir's eyes were filled with anger and shame. "You said you didn't like it." Mu Yaja's voice was deep, and his deep eyes seemed to silently remind her that it was because she did not like this pendant that he had thrown it away. Yun Shirshir was speechless. "You threw it away because I don't like it? If you don't like it, it has lost its value." The man slightly raised his arrogant chin, but his tone was matter of fact. It was as if the value of this pendant was not measured by its cost. It was measured by whether she liked it or not. If she didn't like it, then this pendant had clearly lost its value. It was not a pity to throw away something that had no value. Yun Shirshir deeply knitted her brows. She was angry and amused at the same time. She said that she didn't like it, but did she really not like it? In fact, She really liked this pendant and thought it was very beautiful, but she just didn't want to forgive him so easily. How could he not understand a woman's thoughts? She actually liked this pendant very much. I like it very much. It could be seen that he had carefully selected them. Whether it was the cutting or the polishing, every angle was very delicate. The cost of the production must be expensive. He had carefully prepared such a surprise for her, but she only wanted him to make a statement about his attitude last night. Even if it was just an apology, she would be very happy. But did he have to be so arrogant? Just because she said she didn't mean it, he threw away such an expensive pendant just like that. The most important thing was that she really liked it. Yun Shirshir stared at him expressionlessly. She was angry and annoyed, so she simply turned her head away and didn't want to bother with him anymore. She turned around in a fit of pique and no longer looked at him. She pursed her lips and looked at the calm surface of the lake, but her heart was filled with anger. When Muyaja saw this, he could not help but smile and walked behind her. A pair of long, slender legs stuck close to her skirt. Yun Shirshir turned her head and pursed her lips as she stared at him. Her eyes seemed to be warning him to keep a distance from her. It was obvious that her anger had not subsided. Muyaja could not help laughing. He knew that she must be very angry at this moment. Not only did he not keep a distance from her, he seemed to be sticking closer to her. Chapter 633. No. Yun Shirshir ignored his closeness and coldly replied. Although he said no, there was a strong sense of displeasure in his tone. Presumably, his action of throwing away the pendant had angered her. Muyaja's lips curled into a smile as he leaned closer to her ear and whispered, "Little liar, you're obviously angry." "How would I dare to be angry with you? The great CEO Mu." Yun Shirshir's lips curled into a cold smile as she said in a half-mocking and half-sneering tone, "You said that you don't like that pendant, but you actually like it a lot." He lowered his eyes, and his gaze fell onto her angry face as his words pierced through her thoughts. "That's your thing. You can throw it away as you wish. What has it got to do with me?" Yun Shirshir retorted in a bad mood. But she totally didn't realize that at this moment, the two of them were so close to each other as they exchanged words. It seemed like they were flirting with each other. Muyaja's lips curled into a smile as he secretly thought that this woman was really awkward. But she was also really stupid. She didn't even use her brain to think carefully. Did she really think that he couldn't tell how much she liked that pendant? Muyaja slowly opened his palm. That necklace that he had thrown away at this moment was like a magic trick as it quietly laid horizontally in his palm. Under the bright moonlight, it emitted an enchanting and resplendent luster. In actual fact, he had long seen that her disdain wasn't because she really didn't like it. It was just a woman who said one thing and meant another when she was angry. He could tell that she liked it a lot. That action of throwing the necklace earlier was just a bluff. He didn't expect that she really thought that he had thrown the pendant into the lake. That nervous expression was completely captured by his eyes. Muyaja stood behind her and gently brushed her hair aside. In an instant, that porcelain white neck was exposed in front of his eyes. Muyaja's eyes heated up as his back suddenly tensed up. Her soft and tender skin was snow white and flawless, like a fine piece of art. Especially at this moment, when the light was dim, it made her skin seem even brighter. She was as beautiful as jade. She was truly as beautiful as jade. Coupled with the elegant black gown on her body, the black and white matched, giving off a forbidden seduction that came from her bones. Looking at this beautiful scene, his eyes couldn't help but become deep and serene, so much so that it implicated a certain part of his body that had quietly changed and become vigorous and hot. Yun Shirshir twisted her body, trying to break free from his grasp. He said in a deep voice, "Don't move. You, don't move, or I'll do you right now." Mu Yaja's voice was taught with forbearance and restraint. Hearing this, Yun Shirshir didn't dare to move. There was no doubt about it. If she really moved, she would not be able to move. This man was a man of his words. He really ate her dry on the observation deck. She had already experienced this man's dominance, so there was no doubt about it. While she was feeling gloomy, she suddenly felt a trace of coldness on her neck. She couldn't help but look down. Her gaze fell on her neck, but she saw an exquisite and resplendent diamond dangling from her collarbone. It was actually the one he had thrown away earlier. Didn't he throw it away? Could it be that he was just scaring her? Yun Shirshir was stunned. She was shocked, but her lips couldn't help curling into a smile. Mu Yaja lowered his head and whispered in her ear word by word, "Wear this pendant for me." Chapter 634. You're not allowed to take it off. His tone was as strict as ever, domineering to the point of being unreasonable. Yun Shirshir's fingertips gently rubbed the pendant. She looked up at him and angrily said, "Unreasonable." "That's right, I'm unreasonable." Mu Yaja slowly pulled her into his embrace from behind as his gaze fell onto her face. He saw her slightly lowering her head as her beautiful peach blossom eyes looked at the pendant on her neck. Her fingertips rubbed it lovingly as her light pink lips formed a faint smile. "Didn't you say you didn't like it?" Mu Yaja couldn't help having the thought of teasing her. Yun Shirshir gave a cold snort. "I just think it's a pity to throw it away." "Stubborn mouth," he lightly said. This stupid woman's mouth seemed to be very stubborn, but it could be seen that she really liked his gift. Mu Yaja stared at the shallow dimples on her face and couldn't help having some thoughts. He inexplicably wanted to fiercely seal her lips. Driven by this thought, he immediately took action. He pulled her into his arms, lowered his head, and kissed her pink little mouth. Her soft and tender lips were extremely warm and soft, revealing a sweet taste that made one want more uncontrollably. Yun Shirshir's eyes opened wide in astonishment. The man's kiss suddenly came, and she was not prepared at all. Her eyes opened wide in a daze as his enlarged, handsome face appeared in front of her. His deep silhouette was exquisite and handsome, making him look very handsome. Only when she looked at him from such a close distance did she discover that this man's eyelashes were excessively long. They were thick and black, like two black phoenix feathers. It was no wonder his gaze was so deep and seductive. It had to be said that this man had been blessed by the heavens since he was born. Outstanding features, a proud family background, and a shocking background. This kind of man should be sought after by many women. It was no wonder that in the capital there were many socialites who liked him. Even his cousin was infatuated with him. Indeed, this kind of man was loved by all. His thin lips were slightly cold. Yun Shirshir couldn't help but fall into a daze. She remembered that according to the physiognomy, people with thin lips were mostly fickle and overly rational. Could this man be fickle in love? She allowed him to kiss her. Her reaction was somewhat passive. She did not dare to resist too much and could only endure his domineering kiss. He kissed her fiercely and urgently. His kiss went deep into her throat. If it was possible, he probably wanted to swallow her whole. Yun Shirshir's thoughts couldn't help but drift away inexplicably until the man hugged her waist tightly. While gently kissing her lips, he said, "That day, you blacklisted me. Was it because Mu Wanra said something to you?" Yun Shirshir was stunned and slowly opened her eyes. However, she saw that Mu Yaja had also opened his eyes and was looking at her. His eyes were asking her silently, "Why aren't you saying anything?" Mu Yaja grabbed her chin with a puzzled look on his face. At first, He only suspected that Mu Wanru had run to Yun Shirshir to bluff and claimed that she was pregnant with his flesh and blood. Too many women were sensitive, especially a stubborn woman like Yun Shirshir. She couldn't accept it, but it was just a suspicion. What had happened back then that made her blacklist him for no reason? He still had to ask her. His question reminded her of Mu Wanru's pregnancy. Chapter 635. Yun Shirshir hesitated for a moment and said slowly, "She told me that she was pregnant. She accused me of being the third party in your marriage." Ha! Mu Yaja sneered when he heard that. He couldn't help but feel a little annoyed and helpless. So, you believed her? He might be able to accept it if his number was blacklisted because of other things. But she actually believed it just because a woman said a few insignificant words in front of her. He didn't even ask for any proof. He didn't even give him any chance to explain himself before he was sent to prison. This woman was too much. Yun Shirshir couldn't help raising her eyebrows when she saw his mocking smile. "What's wrong? You believed what she said unconditionally." So, his deep-set eyes stared fixedly at her face as he retorted, "Am I not enough for you to trust me unconditionally? Why should I believe you?" Yun Shirshir questioned him helplessly. She didn't seem to be in a position to question him. When she found out from Mu Wanru that she was pregnant with his flesh and blood, the despair she felt was enough to destroy the heavens and earth, without any doubt. She almost believed him, because she really didn't seem to be in a position to question it. Did she? She was his fiancé, and he was her fiancé. Even if she was pregnant with his flesh and blood, wasn't it legitimate? Shouldn't she obediently withdraw at this time? But now she didn't think so. Everything that Mu Wanru belonged to now belonged to her. She wouldn't back down anymore. She would take back everything that belonged to her by hook or by crook. Yun Shirshir pursed her lips at that thought, but she heard the man chuckle above her head. "My child said it." Yun Shirshir frowned. Mu Yaja stared at her awkward expression and suddenly thought of something. He said mischievously, "You blacklisted me because you were jealous?" She looked up in shock. She saw the man looking down at her with an arrogant and smug expression on his face. Mu Yaja looked at her stunned expression. There was no anger on his face. It was full of arrogance and pride. He suddenly remembered Min Yu's words. Jealousy equals like. This woman liked him. There was no doubt about it. In fact, her love for him was extraordinary. Hence, when Mu Wanru flaunted her prowess in front of her, she flew into a rage out of humiliation and blacklisted him. "You like me." After a pause, Mu Yaja suddenly felt that this word wasn't suitable, so he changed it. "Yun Shirshir, you're in love with me." It was a short few words, but his tone was overbearing and smug. Yun Shirshir was a little dumbfounded as she stared at him with wide eyes. She did not know where this man got his confidence from. Jealousy equals like. He actually automatically put her into such a formula. Where did this man get his sense of self-worth from? Still not admitting it, Mu Yaja reached out and scratched her delicate nose bridge as he chuckled. This woman must love him very much to be so jealous. Minyu said that women in love would have an incomprehensible sense of possessiveness. They usually didn't like their men to be close to any woman. The more jealous she was, the more it represented the irreplaceable position of the man in the woman's heart. Chapter 636. He had never liked jealous women, but for some reason, when he found out that Yun Shirshir was jealous, he felt a little happy. "Yun Shirshir, let me tell you." Mu Yaja held her shoulders and turned her around, forcing her to look into his eyes. He said word by word, "I didn't touch her." Yun Shirshir was stunned. She saw that he was looking at her very seriously, but there was a seriousness in his eyes that she had never seen before. Yun Shirshir, I haven't touched any other woman except you. You believe me? He explained again with a serious expression. Yun Shirshir's eyes flashed with confusion. The doubts in her heart slowly spread. She was very surprised by his so-called explanation. Last time in the bar, Mu Wanru announced to her that she was pregnant so arrogantly. Could it be fake? She quickly changed her mind and denied it. It couldn't be fake. When she bumped into Mu Wanru in the restaurant, she really had morning sickness. There was no trace of acting. Based on her experience, she concluded that this woman must be pregnant, because when she was pregnant with Xiao Yichen and Yu, her morning sickness was very serious, and Mu Wanru's symptoms were more than a month pregnant. But Mu Yaja told her that he didn't touch her. Could she believe it? Could she believe this man? Mu Wanru was faking it to fool her. Or was this man lying to her? Her thoughts were a little messed up. Yun Shirshir's expression suddenly turned cold. She couldn't accept that another woman was pregnant with his child. But what was even more unacceptable was that he was lying to her. Thus, Yun Shirshir smiled tactfully, but seriously. Mu Yaja, you don't have to explain so much. Mu Wanru is obviously pregnant, but you said that you didn't touch her? After a pause, she stared into his eyes and asked seriously, Or are you lying to me like I'm a child? Are you messing with me? Do you really think I'm that gullible? Mu Yaja was a little angry. Are you questioning my words? Yun Shirshir's face paled. Doubt. If you haven't touched her, then whose child is she carrying? Could it be that she cheated on you? She didn't believe that Mu Wanru had an affair, and she didn't believe that the child in her belly wasn't Mu Yaja's. If that was the case, it would be a huge scandal for the Mu family. With Mu Yaja's proud personality, how could he tolerate such a betrayal? Mu Yaja's face changed. Seeing the undisguised doubt on her face, a trace of anger immediately appeared in his eyes. Yun Shirshir, you don't believe me? Yun Shirshir raised her chin and said expressionlessly, I only believe in facts. He was annoyed. She is pregnant, but the child is not mine. Then whose is it? Yun Shirshir was aggressive. Obviously, she didn't want to be perfunctorily brushed off like this. Mu Yaja's brows slightly furrowed. After a moment of silence, he said coldly, Listen, she is just a chess piece to me, a chess piece to be used in exchange for the power of the Mu family. From the beginning to the end, I haven't touched her at all. As for who the child in her belly is, you will know in the future. After a pause, he clasped her shoulders tightly and said in a deep voice, You just have to remember that I haven't touched her. That's enough. Yun Shirshir couldn't take it anymore and pushed him away. Can you not be so perfunctory with me? Chapter 637. Mu Yaja's eyes turned cold as a look of fury surfaced on his face. I never said that you're a pawn. You can get engaged to a so-called pawn, but you can't give me a proper reason. Am I actually less than a pawn in your eyes? Yun Shirshir sneered as she retorted. Mu Yaja's face instantly darkened. Instantly, he froze. What do you mean? Yun Shirshir curled her lips into a smile as she tried hard to maintain her composure. However, the voice that escaped from her throat was slightly trembling. Mu Yaja, I like you. What about you? You like me? Mu Yaja opened his mouth, slightly, but could not make a sound. The word, was stuck in his throat, and he could not utter it. He had always been arrogant and proud. In front of the woman he liked, he could not frankly say the word, like. Seeing his silence, Yun Shirshir's smile turned slightly cold. Then, I'll tell you too. I like you. If I like you and have set my mind on you, can I give you my heart? What about you? Can you? He could. However, Even though he thought so in his heart, the words that he wanted to say reached his lips, but no sound came out. Mu Yaja stared fixedly at her and was momentarily speechless. Do you know who I met just now? Yun Shirsher's face was a little pale. Gradually, her eyelashes drooped as a look of disappointment flashed across her eyes. She said weakly, I met Song Enya. She righteously accused me in front of everyone and mocked me for being a third party. Muyaja, are my feelings cheap? Or am I just a pawn in your eyes? A woman that you can summon when you're lonely and dismiss when you're tired of me? You can give Mu Wanru a proper marriage contract, but you can't give me a clean identity. I don't want a romantic date. I don't want a beautiful diamond pendant. I don't want you to go through so much trouble to please me. Yun Shirsher looked up at him with a pale face. Two pairs of eyes collided in the air. She looked at him and suddenly leaned closer to him. She pressed against his front and raised her hand to lightly tap his chest with her fingertips. There, she could feel his sonorous heartbeat. I want this part of yours. Can you give it to me? Mu Yaja's handsome eyes stared at her without blinking. Yun Shirsher's throat was dry as she questioned him again. I want to be loved and doted on legitimately. Can you give it to me? His silence from the start to the end gradually disheartened her. She laughed at herself, thinking that her earlier outburst of questioning was too laughable. In his heart, was she really just a chess piece that could come and go as he wished? Do you know what marriage means to me? If you can't even give me a proper identity, why should I like you? Yun Shirsher gritted her teeth and said weakly, I don't want to like you anymore. That sentence was like a cold thorn that pierced deep into his flesh. In that moment, his heart felt like it was pierced by a sharp sword. She didn't want to like him anymore? Damn woman. How could she talk to herself like that? She didn't want to like him, but did he allow it? Muyaja stood there. His tall and arrogant figure seemed to be petrified. The expression on his face was as cold as ice. In his eyes, there was only shock and anger. Yun Shirsher couldn't stand his silence and turned to leave. Chapter 638. Yun Shirsher felt a wave of dizziness wash over her as she was pushed hard against the railing by him. Muyaja held her waist with one hand and pressed the other on the railing to keep her in front of him. I'll give you a chance to take back what you just said. He stared at her and said coldly, Take back what you said, Yun Shirsher. Take it back. Yun Shirsher's face turned pale. She suddenly curled her lips and asked seriously, Okay, which sentence do you want me to take back? Don't like me anymore. The corners of her lips curled up. She suddenly turned her eyes and looked elsewhere. Her face returned to its usual cold and expressionless state. She didn't say anything for a while. Muyaja saw that she was silent and couldn't help feeling annoyed. His dark eyes were filled with viciousness, and the hand holding her shoulder tightened. Say it. Yun Shirsher's gaze never fell on him. She wanted to speak several times, but she felt that her throat was dry. Say it. Muyaja lost his patience. This woman was really trying to anger him. He stared at her cold expression and suppressed the anger that was on the verge of bursting out. Is it that hard to take back what I said? Muyaja suddenly stared at her coldly and grabbed her chin, forcing her to look up at him. He said word by word, Yun Shirsher, remember, I won't allow you to leave me. So what do you mean by this? Yun Shirsher was so angry that she laughed and her lips curled up. Muyaja, do you want me to be like a mistress that you keep by your side, like a canary in your cage? You're my woman, not a canary. Muyaja corrected her condescendingly as he glared at her. So, you don't have to use this to brush me off. Yes, women, you can have many women. Yun Shirsher said, lightly. Even though her heart ached, she tried to maintain a calm expression on her face. But I won't be the only one. You are. Why was this woman talking to herself? Other than her, he did not have any other woman. Muyaja said in a deep voice, "You are my only one." Yun Shirshir stared at him in a daze. Suddenly, she asked in return, "What proof can you use?" "You need me to give you a status." It was not a rhetorical question, but a statement. There was no doubt about it. Yun Shirshir did not say a word, but it was a tacit agreement. On the observation deck, the cold wind blew. The evening breeze from the lakeside carried a bit of bone-chilling dampness. Yun Shirshir leaned against the handrail. Muyaja pressed a hand on her shoulder. Although he tried to control himself, he still hurt her. Her face was still deathly still, without any ripples. Muyaja stared at her with his dark eyes. "Is a piece of paper worth you so much?" Could it be that this woman believed this piece of paper, but not him? Yun Shirshir looked at him in astonishment. In this man's heart, could it be that the marriage certificate was just a piece of paper that was not important enough? Muyaja saw that she did not speak, so he asked again in a deep voice, "Compared to that piece of paper, am I really not worthy of your trust?" Yun Shirshir found it funny and asked back, "You can't even give me a piece of paper. May I ask, how can I trust you?" This piece of paper was a very sacred thing in her heart, and it was worthy of respect. But the value in his heart seemed to be very cheap. Chapter 639. Respect. Yun Shirshir said firmly, in her heart, marriage was sacred. Even though the family environment she grew up in didn't give her the idea that marriage was a happy one, but in her heart, she longed for a family. However, a family had to be built on this piece of paper. Only then could it be justified. "I care about it a lot. I really care about it." "What exactly are you thinking? If there's even a little place for me in your heart, how can you watch our child call another woman mommy?" Yun Shirshir lost her composure a little and blurted out. This sentence was like a cold knife. It pierced his heart. Blood dripped. Muyaja's eyes were fixed on her. "Do you really think that I want this status?" Yun Shirshir's face was cold. "Okay, why don't we put ourselves in the same position?" "What?" "Muyaja, I love you," Yun Shirshir continued calmly, "but similarly, I can't give you a status." Muyaja's body froze, and his eyes gradually darkened. "I will marry another man, but you have to believe that it's just a piece of paper. Although I live under the same roof as him, he is my husband, and I am his wife. You will call him Daddy, and nothing will happen between him and me, but you have to believe that my heart will always be with you." Yun Shirshir smiled coldly and looked at Muyaja's frozen expression. She asked with a smile, "Is this okay?" Muyaja's eyes were filled with emotions. He seemed to be trying his best to suppress something. Yun Shirshir stared at his handsome face, trying to find a trace of change on his face. "What? Since you don't care about something like status, then you definitely don't care about it. Enough." "Not enough. Enough." Muyaja looked at her gloomily and interrupted her with a loud shout. "Yun Shirshir, that's enough." Without giving her a chance to speak, he pressed down on her shoulders and kissed her fiercely. He kissed her madly, without regard for anything else. It was as if the whole world was spinning. The kiss was deep and filled with fear. Her words just now had actually made him feel helpless and fearful. He couldn't imagine you calling another man daddy. It was even more unimaginable that she would become another man's wife in name. In the beginning, in his eyes, status was just a way to tie two people together. It was not binding. In his eyes, this was just a piece of paper on the Vanity Fair. It was insignificant. But now he didn't think so. He couldn't stand her being any man's wife in name. Not even a piece of paper. Yun Shirshir stubbornly kept her mouth shut, not giving him any chance to enter. Even though he attacked fiercely, she still did not open her mouth to welcome him. Muyaja seemed to have gone crazy. His eyes were dark red, and his strong arms hugged her waist tightly, forcing her body to be closer to his chest. But she still kept her lips tightly shut until the man tasted a faint trace of blood between their lips and teeth. Unknowingly, there was a crack on his lips, and there was a trace of blood on her lips. Muyaja looked down, and the tip of his tongue slowly stroked her bleeding mouth. A trace of fishy sweetness immediately filled his mouth. Even if she was covered in wounds, she was still unwilling to accept his entry. With this fishy sweetness, Chapter 640, Yun Shirshir, on the other hand, was like a puppet that had lost its soul. Her eyes were empty and lifeless. Pressing against his lips, Yun Shirshir opened her empty eyes and squeezed out a few words from the roots of her teeth. "Muyaja, do you love me?" Muyaja paused. His handsome face froze. Yun Shirshir persistently asked him, "Do you love me? I want to know. Do you treat me as a toy or as someone you love? Say it. Say it. Is this question difficult to answer?" Yun Shirshir's gaze locked onto his dark eyes. In the next second, Muyaja took advantage of her and sealed her lips fiercely once again. Pressing his lips against hers, Muyaja stared into her eyes and uttered a low and hoarse word from his throat. "Love." Yun Shirshir's eyes flashed for a second. Following that, she was in a trance for a moment and actually froze on the spot. She had thought that he would remain silent until the end. However, she had never thought that he would actually say this word out loud. "Love." Muyaja repeated this word slowly and gently embellished her kiss. The tip of his tongue traced the trace of sweetness at the side of her lips and slowly said, "If you want that piece of paper, I'll give it to you." If this was what she wanted the most, then he would give it to her. Yun Shirshir was completely dumbfounded. "If you want to dote on me, legitimately, I'll give it to you." Yun Shirshir was stunned by his domineering tone. It was really unbelievable that such a proud man would lower himself to this extent. In fact, he was an extremely stubborn man. Stubborn and exclusive. Once he set his mind on something, he would continue to be stubborn and no one would be able to change his mind. Similarly, no one could replace the woman he had set his mind on. Whatever she wanted, he could satisfy her. However, he would never allow her to leave him. He looked up, and his deep gaze locked onto her face. His brows relaxed slightly, adding a bit of warmth and gentleness. "I can give you everything you want. Other than leaving my side, I can give you anything." Yun Shirshir looked at him in a daze. He pressed his lips against hers, his deep and clear words spilling out from between his lips. "You want my body, my heart, I'll give it all to you, only you. I promise you, I won't touch any other woman, only you, as long as you." Could she understand? His confession was a little clumsy. There were no flowery words or promises like other men. Every word was so straightforward and stubborn. There was almost no hesitation as he spoke seriously to her. "Yun Shirshir, I only want you. Muyaja, as long as you like it, I can give you my entire world." In fact, he did not hold back at all. Other than leaving my side, no matter what, he could give her anything. "Now, can I kiss you?" Muyaja asked in a hoarse voice. He wanted her. He wanted her like a madman. This woman was a parasite. He had been poisoned by her parasite. Other than her, no one else could cure him. Yun Shirshir pursed her lips. It was not that she was not shocked. Slowly, she wrapped her arms around his waist. It was as if she was inviting him. Suddenly, her chin was gently lifted by his slender fingers. The man's perfect face approached her ambiguously. Mu Yaja then lowered his head and gently covered the corner of her lips with his thin, moist lips. Chapter 641. Yun Shirshir was stunned. Her eyes suddenly widened, and she frowned in disbelief. Mu Yaja lowered his eyes and covered her eyes. He gently lowered his eyelids and kissed her softly. The deep affection that was so gentle that it reached her bones made her heart beat like thunder. The moonlight flowed gently, and the mottled shadows of the stars against the pure white light. His face seemed to be plated with a layer of moonlight, making his skin look even more jade-like. Through the gaps between her fingers, Yun Shirshir opened her eyes. The man's handsome face was startled. Mu Yaja imprisoned her in front of his chest. He lifted her chin with one hand and rubbed the soft hair on the side of her face with the other. He sealed her lips. It was not as aggressive as before. Instead, it was a rare tenderness. He gently sucked on her soft pink lips and carefully cleaned her lips. Following the tip of his tongue, he gently pried open the gap between her lips and brushed past her pearly white teeth. The tips of his tongue seemed to touch her as if there was nothing there. It seemed that no woman could resist this tenderness that could almost melt ice. Yun Shirshir was kissed by him until her face and ears turned red. A layer of red immediately appeared on her cheeks. Her hands were a little restless in front of his chest. Mu Yaja grabbed her wrist and slowly moved it to his waist. Yun Shirshir obediently hugged his waist. Their fingers were interlocked, but her knuckles were white from nervousness. A bunch of fireworks suddenly rose in the sky and bloomed beautifully in the night sky. Mu Yaja looked up, slightly, and gently caressed her face with his slender fingers. His fingertips touched the silky smooth skin. It made his heart skip a beat. A certain part of him was already tense to a critical point. He was ready to go. He kissed between her eyebrows. He liked her beautiful eyebrows. He kissed her eyes. He liked her soul-stirring peach blossom eyes. He kissed the tip of her nose. He liked her delicate and small nose. He kissed her lips. This was his favorite place. After tasting it, he wanted more. Mu Yaja's tall and straight-bodied bullied her without restraint. She was almost bearing all of his weight, so it was inevitable that she would feel a little weak. Mu Yaja? The man seemed to have not heard her delicate begging for mercy. His hand slowly reached down and lifted the corner of her skirt. Mu Yaja! Yun Shirshir pouted. What is it? Don't do it here. Yun Shirshir compromised. Mu Yaja interrupted her blandly. It's right here. This was the most secluded and elegant place on Hushin Island. The viewing platform had the most beautiful night view of Hushin Island. At the same time, no one would disturb them. Yun Shirshir blushed and said, I'm hungry. I'm hungry too. Mu Yaja's voice was hoarse, revealing a bit of suppressed lust. His skin was magnetic. His breath was like an orchid, almost burning her cheeks in an instant. Yun Shirshir couldn't help but blush even more. Stop fooling around, okay? I'm not fooling around. I'm really hungry. I'm really hungry too. Yun Shirshir kept quiet out of spite. This man was really. Mu Yaja leaned over and kissed her sensitive earlobe. He said in a deep voice, I'll feed you first, then you can feed me. This was a step of his compromise, an exchange of conditions. His deep and obscure voice revealed his dark desire. Looking at her, his eyes were very deep, but there was no need to hide it, especially the fire in his handsome eyes. He couldn't suppress it no matter what. Yun Shirshir licked her lips. She was really hungry. Chapter 642. In Yun Shan Shir-E, other than breakfast, she locked herself in the room and lay on the bed to sleep. She had not eaten or drunk for the entire day. "I want to eat first," Yun Shirshir said. In the next second, Mu Yaja carried her up. Her toes left the ground, and the world spun. In the blink of an eye, Mu Yaja sat at the dining table with her in his arms. Yun Shirshir wanted to get down from him, but he did not allow it. His strong, long arms wrapped tightly around her waist, and he sat her in his arms. His chest was warm and strong, enough to accommodate her entire world. Yun Shirshir bit her lips. Her entire body was in his arms. This position was too intimate. Her back was against his chest, and her legs were hanging on his legs. Through the thin material of his clothes, she could even clearly feel his strong heartbeat. Her face turned red. She struggled, trying to get down from him again. Mu Yaja's deep and magnetic voice rang above her head just in time. "Don't move. Otherwise, I'll let you feed me right now." He endured to the extreme and suppressed to the extreme. His body was clamoring for her all the time. But considering that she was hungry, he tried very hard to endure the tension and heat that was clamoring for him all the time. Every time she moved, he would break down a little. After pressing the silver service bell on the table, the dishes were quickly served one by one. Soon, a delicious, sumptuous meal was presented on the table. The table was neither big nor small, but the 18 exquisite dishes were just enough to fill it. The aroma hit them, catching them off guard. They were completely immersed in this amazing aroma. French pigeon meat pine tart, black truffle tomato with fresh oysters, orange French foie gras. Every single one of them was the best of the best in Western cuisine. It whetted one's appetite. Yun Shirshir stared at the dishes on the table with her mouth agape. Every dish was so exquisite, like an expensive work of art. Every dish was beautifully arranged. She was even a little reluctant to move her chopsticks so as to destroy this extreme beauty. His stomach, however, was howling desperately. His mouth, in particular, quickly secreted a gluttonous saliva. She swallowed, obviously starving. The corners of Mu Yaja's lips curled up slightly. His palm caressed her hungry stomach. It looked like she was really hungry. Thus, he held her waist with one hand and picked up the fork with the other. "What do you want to eat?" Yun Shirshir said in embarrassment. "I'll do it myself." "I'll feed you." Yun Shirshir persisted. "No need. I can do it myself." Mu Yaja pinched her waist and reminded her in an ambiguous tone, "We agreed that I would feed you. Save some energy. I'll be waiting for you to feed me later." Yun Shirshir's face turned even redder when she heard that. "You don't have to," Mu Yaja said slowly. "I'll feed you." His tone clearly did not allow anyone to object. Yun Shirshir simply gave up and let him sit on her body. Mu Yaja forked a small piece of steak and slowly brought it to her mouth. Yun Shirshir gently took a bite. Instantly, the meat juice overflowed. The meat was soft, and the inside was tough. It tasted great. Delicious. Delicious. It was so delicious that she almost could not speak. Her eyes swept across the dishes on the table, but her face was filled with incomparable satisfaction. Mu Yaja did not seem to be so enthusiastic about French food. Chapter 643. French cuisine was all about delicacy. Even if there was a slight difference in the texture, he would be able to tell right away. Different chefs had their own understanding of delicacies. Therefore, the same dish would taste different when cooked by different chefs. There was no doubt that his taste in delicacies was still better than hers. He was extremely picky. Therefore, no matter how he purposely picked something that he thought was delicious and brought it to her mouth. However, when it came to Yun Shirshir, whose taste was a level lower than his, he completely fell for it. It was delicious. It was as delicious as Yu's cooking. However, in terms of taste, Yu's cooking was still better. French cuisine was exquisite and delicious, but it was not targeted. The person who understood her taste the most was Yu. After a period of trial and error, the little guy had figured out what his mommy's taste was. Therefore, he would cater to her taste for every delicious meal. Therefore, she couldn't help but mutter, "It's delicious, but it's still not as good as Yu's cooking." You knows how to cook." Yaja raised his handsome eyebrows slightly. He was obviously a little surprised. Yes. As Yun Shirshir spoke, she suddenly glared at him vigilantly. "Don't even think about it. You only cooks for me. He's my personal chef." She looked a little smug. Yaja couldn't help but pinch her cheeks affectionately. It was quite textured. Yun Shirshir avoided his action and rubbed her belly. "I'm still hungry. Feed me again." Yaja couldn't help but laugh. His gaze swept across the dining table and landed on the fresh oyster. He scooped it up with a spoon. The soft and tender flesh made him drool. Yun Shirshir waited expectantly for his next move. Yaja, on the other hand, continued to stuff it into his mouth. Yun Shirshir was stunned and froze for a moment. Didn't he say that he was going to feed her after it entered his mouth? What's wrong with you?" Yun Shirshir's eyes were filled with silent accusation as she glared at him unhappily. She had promised to feed him, but in the end, she sent it into her own mouth. Yaja held the fresh meat between his lips and teeth, not in a hurry to swallow it. He looked back at her indifferently, as if he was silently provoking her. Yun Shirshir was not to be outdone. She held his face and leaned over, trying to snatch the delicious food from his mouth. She pressed her lips against the corner of his lips and bit down with her pearly white teeth, snatching the fresh meat into her mouth. Delicious! She was a feast for the eyes. She was truly a feast for the eyes. No matter what a beautiful person did, it was always pleasing to the eye. Yun Shirshir was like that. Yaja took advantage of the situation and kissed her. The tip of his tongue flicked across her lips that were covered in sauce and deeply invaded. This could be considered as helping each other in times of need. It was the most intimate way for people to be together. He carelessly and unscrupulously dotted her lips. Yun Shirshir was so shocked by his sudden invasion that she couldn't help but lean back. However, he didn't allow her to dodge. His palm clasped the back of her neck tightly, forcing her body to stick to him. He wasn't hungry at first. However, looking at her, he vaguely felt a little hungry. The tip of his tongue gently swept across every inch of her lips, licking those alluring pink lips clean. Not a single bit was left out. It was as if he was seriously tasting the delicious food. Thus, he used this method to feed her the delicious food mouth to mouth. At first, she was still a little uncomfortable, as if she wasn't used to such an intimate way of feeding. Thus, she reached out to take the knife and fork from his hand, wanting to do it herself. However, Yaja's hand slightly avoided her movements. Chapter 644. She didn't know why, but the originally tasteless meal tasted amazingly delicious in her mouth. Yaja was an extremely clean freak. He usually didn't like anyone getting close to him, not to mention mouth to mouth. Even if someone touched his hand, he would feel a sense of disgust from the bottom of his heart. However, with this woman, he actually longed for this kind of closeness. Mouth-to-mouth feeding should have been the most primitive way of feeding. Newborn babies didn't have the ability to move, so mothers would feed food into their children's mouths in this way. However, even many couples found it difficult to adapt to this kind of method. Just now, the fresh food was in his mouth, staining his lips and teeth. However, this woman naturally snatched the food from his mouth without the slightest disgust in her eyes. Such intimacy caused a warm feeling to grow in the depths of his heart. He seemed to be infatuated with this woman's closeness. This feeling of longing was something that he had never felt before. At that moment, something that had long been frozen seemed to be deeply touched. He couldn't help but yearn for more of this kind of closeness. Therefore, when Yun Shirshir reached out to snatch the knife and fork in his hand, he avoided it. How could he allow his fun to be interrupted? Yun Shirshir was a little annoyed. She glared at him and said seriously, "I can do it myself. I don't need you to feed me." "I'll feed you." "No, I'll do it myself." "I'll feed you." "Hey, I'll feed you." Yun Shirshir was so angry that she frowned. How could this man be so hateful? He even deprived her of the freedom to eat. Mu Yaja found that her coquettish and slightly annoyed expression was actually a little cute. He liked her expression very much. Not eating. Mu Yaja saw that she was frozen in his arms and didn't move, so he asked. Yun Shirshir seemed to be angry and didn't want to pay attention to him. She seemed to be acting coquettishly, but also seemed to be sulking. The man lowered his head slightly and asked, "Are you full?" Yun Shirshir pursed her lips tightly and seemed to ignore him. "Since you're full, it's your turn to feed me." As Mu Yaja spoke, his warm palms slowly extended into her skirt, following her soft and tender skin to explore the mysterious area. Yun Shirshir was so shocked that she hurriedly stopped him. Somewhat embarrassed and annoyed, she said, "What are you doing?" "Eat you. What are you thinking about all day long?" Yun Shirshir felt angry and amused at the same time. "I was thinking about how to eat you." Yun Shirshir was completely speechless. She only said gloomily, "But I'm not full yet." Mu Yaja raised his eyebrows slightly, sucking on another piece of steak as he inched closer to her face. But this time, she couldn't care less about it. He was simply too hungry. Once a person was hungry, they couldn't care less. Thus, she gently hugged his shoulders and took the food from his mouth, swallowing it happily. He tirelessly used such a complicated method to feed her again and again. And Yun Shirshir gradually accepted the way he fed her. Like an obedient kitten, she nestled in the man's arms and took the food from his mouth calmly. In the process, more than half of the delicious food on the table was quickly gone. Mu Yaja sucked on a mouthful of foie gras. After feeding her, he took the opportunity to kiss her again. Chapter 645. He hugged her to sit on his body and deepen the kiss. Yun Shirshir still had some sense. She realized that they were in the restaurant's private room, and she didn't know when someone would break in. So she couldn't help but feel nervous. "Don't be here. Someone will come in later." "No." He coaxed her with his lips against hers. This was his world. Without his orders and summons, who would dare to step in here? Her apprehension was therefore entirely superfluous. Yun Shirshir couldn't resist and could only let him kiss her deeper. It had to be said that Mu Yaja's kissing skills weren't exquisite at first. When he first kissed her, he took her by force. He was overbearing, but he was also a little clumsy. But now his kissing skills were superb and exquisite, and he was already on her finger. She wasn't his opponent at all. After a lingering kiss, she felt as if she was about to turn into a pool of spring water in his arms. He didn't even take the next step. Just by kissing like this, she felt as if there was an electric current running up her spine, and her heart was beating fast. Yun Shirshir's shoulders couldn't help trembling slightly, and she shivered. She couldn't help but reach out her hand to resist his attack. Mu Yaja, however, took the opportunity to kiss her jade-like fingertips and pecked them lightly. A numbness instantly spread from her fingertips to her heart. Then he lifted her chin with his slender fingers, lowered his eyes, and kissed her on the lips, twisting and rubbing against her. Mu Yaja hugged her waist and stood up with her in his arms. She let out a cry of surprise. and by the time he came back to his senses, she was already in an ambiguous position with her body pressed tightly against his. It was so ambiguous that it was unreasonable. The temperature in the room suddenly rose. Muyaja pecked her lips and whispered in her ear, "Sure, stay with me." His voice was clear, deep, and extremely magnetic, but inadvertently revealed an unprecedented pampering. He said that he wanted her to be with him. He gave her the whole world. His whole world. Yun Shirshir's face couldn't help but heat up a little. She slowly nodded and softly said, "And which could be considered a happy agreement. Okay, be together." She would give him the whole world. Her whole world. There was another private room in the private room. The bathroom, bed, sofa. Everything was fully equipped, just like a dreamy suite. Muyaja carried her to the sofa and carefully placed her on it. It was as if she was an extremely fragile treasure. His gentle movements made her feel as if she was in a dream. It was as if she had never been so gently doted on by a man before. Could it be a dream? Yun Shirshir was inexplicably worried about personal gains and losses. She was scared witless. He was afraid that everything in front of him was just a dream. When the dream was shattered, he woke up. Yun Shirshir was in a daze. She couldn't help but reach out her hand and caress his handsome face. Her slender fingers caressed every inch of his extraordinary features. It was unbelievably real. It was not a dream. Her fingertips couldn't help but tremble slightly. Muyaja held her hand and kissed it gently. Then their fingers intertwined, and his body slowly covered hers. In this position, he entered her. There was no aggressive attack, no forceful taking. His movements were gentler than any other time. He cherished her. He couldn't bear to hurt her. He wanted her to clearly feel how wonderful it was to make love with him. In the aftertaste of love, she gently closed her eyes and lay in his arms. She rested her head on his warm chest and wrapped her fingers around the necklace on her collarbone. The diamond embedded in the pendant was cut into the shape of a beautiful shooting star. It was exquisite, noble, and elegant. Chapter 646. It was so beautiful. Yun Shirshir's eyes were curved, and her eyes were bright as if she was smiling. She liked the pendant so much that she couldn't bear to part with it. She didn't hide her love for the pendant at all. Seeing that she seemed to really like it, he was very happy. Minyu, this kid, was not bad sometimes when he came up with ideas. Muyaja wrapped one arm around her body, lowered his head, and kissed her gently between her eyebrows. Yun Shirshir pursed her lips and smiled shyly. Her fair, jade-like face was pink and tender. She was obviously shy, and the shallow dimples on her cheeks made her look a little lovey-dovey. Her dimples were very beautiful. They were shallow and small, and when she smiled, they were too sweet. Muyaja couldn't help but kiss her dimples with infatuation. He really liked her naive look. She was lively and fragrant. She was charming and enchanting. She was clearly such a tender and pure beauty, but her bones seemed to exude the most primitive temptation of a woman, like a charm. He even suspected that this woman must have been a disaster in her previous life. She was born in ancient times and deserved to be a demon concubine who bewitched the emperor. Looking at her lovely appearance, Muyaja's throat moved, and his lower abdomen faintly tightened again. No matter how much he wanted this woman, he could never get enough of her. Yun Shirshir had no idea what kind of deep water the man beside her was in at this moment, and she also didn't know that this man loved her dearly and was trying hard to suppress the vigorous lust in his body. She suddenly looked up and smiled. She thought for a moment and asked carefully, "Muyaja, I want to ask you a question." "Je." Muyaja suddenly said a word, but Yun Shirshir was a little stunned. She didn't understand the meaning of the word. Mu Yaja saw her stunned expression and couldn't help but reach out to touch her nose. He laughed and said, "Little fool, you don't have to call my name." When he said that, Yun Shirshir was smart enough to understand the meaning of his words. She blushed and asked tentatively, "Je?" Her voice was soft and gentle, but her one word was enough to melt his bones. It was just a single syllable, but it was full of killing power. It was as if an electric current was flowing through his limbs and bones. To be able to use this title on him meant that they were the closest people to him. Yun Shirshir was the first. Her voice was soft, and it was very pleasing to the ears. He liked her calling him that. Thus, Mu Yaja lightly pecked her lips and requested, "Say it again." Yun Shirshir pursed her lips. She was obviously a little shy. "Say it again. Ja, make it softer. Ja." Satisfied, Mu Yaja kissed her on the lips again, as if rewarding her. The tip of his tongue traced the contours of her lips lovingly. Yun Shirshir pushed him away coquettishly. "Hey, why are you like this?" "What?" "I just wanted to ask you a question. Let's talk about it later." Mu Yaja didn't have the heart to care about other things. He only wanted to taste her beauty and tenderness to his heart's content. Yun Shirshir saw that the handsome face was unscrupulously pressing down on her, and reached out to block his lips. "Can I see Xiaoyi Chen in the future?" she murmured softly. Her face was obviously nervous and pleading. She liked Xiaoyi Chen very much, and she also felt sorry for this child. Chapter 647. The last time she saw this child at the amusement park. Even though they had been estranged for 6 years, she still felt extremely close to him. Mother and son were connected by blood. He was, after all, her flesh and blood. She had not seen this child for 6 years, but her yearning for him had never stopped. That day, when little Ichen complained in front of her that "Daddy doesn't want me anymore," her heart had also broken into pieces. Her heart ached for this child. When Yu was young, she studied many books on child psychology. Yu only had her as his mother. He never knew who his father was. When he was in kindergarten, Yu would often ask her if he had a father. Every time this happened, Yun Shirshir's heart would ache terribly. She had always worked hard for Yu. He only had her. Without a father, his family was not complete. Thus, she tried her best to create a happy childhood for him. She did not want him to become an emotional orphan. Yu, on the other hand, was sensible and well-behaved. Later, he did not ask about his father. The mother and son depended on each other. With her hard work, Yu did not have a lonely childhood. However, when she saw Xiaoyi Chen at the amusement park that day, she saw undisguised loneliness in his eyes. Lonely! This child looked very lonely. She was surprised by this turn of events. It was different from Yun Tianyu. From the moment Xiaoyi Chen was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, he was destined to be doted on. Yu did not have a father. Xiaoyi Chen, on the other hand, had a father and a mother. Logically speaking, this child should not be so lonely and should have a blissful and wonderful childhood. However, when Yun Shirshir saw Xiaoyi Chen's lonely and empty eyes that day, she felt as if a deep wound had been torn in her heart. The pain was unbearable. He was like a severely injured animal curled up in a corner, licking his wounds alone. It was not that Yun Shirshir was not surprised. How did this child survive for the past 6 years? Could it be that Mu Yaja did not love him enough? However, after Yun Shirshir thought about it, after understanding Mu Wanru's character, she knew that she wouldn't spend much effort on Xiaoyi Chen. After all, she wasn't his biological daughter. After all, it was not a piece of meat that fell from his body. When it came to Xiaoyi Chen, how could he expect Mu Wanru to have any maternal instincts? Did he want Mu Wanru to dote on Xiao Chen like her own son? Presumably, Mu Wanru was only doing this for Mu Yaja's sake. On the surface, she treated Xiao Chen like a son, but in reality, children were sensitive and could acutely sense the emotions of adults. It was obvious that Xiao Chen was not close to Mu Wanru. As for Mu Yaja, he was Xiao Chen's father. Naturally, he had to play the role of a strict father. In a child's heart, if a mother was a gentle harbor, then a father should be a strict and imposing figure. He should be a great hero. Without a doubt, Mu Yaja was very strict with Xiao Chen's education. This child was really amazing. She had seen his skills. In the haunted house, his kick in the air was comparable to that of an adult man. Although he was only 6 years old, he already had the bearing of a young man in his every movement. Chapter 648. She wanted to make it up to this child. Mu Yaja caught the pleading and cautious look in Yun Shishir's eyes. He could not help but recall that day at the hospital when Yun Shishir carried Yu away. Xiao Chen chased after her reluctantly, with tears streaming down his cheeks. Sometimes one's bloodline was a very mysterious thing. Yun Shishir did not know. Mu Yaja, however, knew. It was not that Mu Wanru had not tried to enter Xiao Chen's heart. She tried to please and dote on Xiao Chen, but she could not get him close to Mu Wanru from the bottom of his heart. However, although Yun Shishir and Xiao Chen had only interacted for half a day at most, Xiao Chen was obviously very concerned about her. This child was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. This was very similar to him. He was the same when he was young. Other than his mother, he was not close to anyone. After his mother passed away, he sealed his heart. As for Xiao Chen, other than in front of him, he seemed to be as cold as frost when interacting with others. He was not close to anyone. Even Mu Sheng, who loved him to the bone, kept a distance from the little lad. He sealed himself in his own world. He was very strict with Xiao Chen. When Xiao Chen was only 4 years old, he threw him into the special training camp and underwent hellish training from a young age. The child was in awe of him, yet he yearned to be close to him. It was just that he was usually busy with work and could not take care of everything. Hence, it was inevitable that he would neglect to interact with the child. Thinking of this, Mu Yaja could not help but laugh. It seemed that he was not a very qualified father. His gaze fell on her as he replied blandly, "Of course you can." Yun Shishir was slightly stunned when she heard this. Then, her eyes widened in surprise. She was caught off guard by this sudden happiness. Really? How could this man agree so easily? She was in disbelief. Yun Shishir was a woman who knew how to adapt to the circumstances. She loved Xiao Chen very much, but she did not forget that she had signed a contract with him. The terms of the contract stated that she would unconditionally give up custody of Xiao Chen. However, things were different now. Mu Yaja promised her that he would give her the whole world, his whole world. However, she did not ask for much. She only wanted a home with him and 2 children. She initially thought that the man would, at most, promise her to meet little Chen once in a while. She did not expect him to agree so decisively. Her heart was filled. The man's lips curled into a smile. Why not? This was their child's. Was? SSSSSSSS. She was Xiao Chen's biological mother. Why couldn't she see Xiao Chen? Thank you. Yun Shishir smiled contentedly. Is that all? Mu Yaja lowered his eyes and looked at her. Obviously, he was not satisfied with such a simple word. Thank you? He did not need a verbal thank you. Yun Shishir was not enlightened in this aspect, so she could not understand the meaning behind his words. It was often said that a woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the sea. However, she did not know that a man's heart was deeper than the sea, especially a black-bellied man like Muyaja. He was even more unfathomable and unpredictable. Muyaja lifted his chin slightly and looked at her from the corner of his eyes. The meaning in his eyes could not be more obvious. Yun Shirshir understood the meaning in his eyes. This man was really a kissing maniac. Chapter 649. Yun Shirshir hooked her arm around the back of his neck and pressed her lips tightly against his. Muyaja cupped the back of her head with his hand and deepened the kiss, charming, deep, and reluctant to part. Just as Yun Shirshir thought that she was about to suffocate, the kiss ended abruptly. Yun Shirshir snuggled in his arms lazily like a kitten. Suddenly, she thought of something and said, "Muyaja." Just as she said those 3 words, the man's light gaze landed on her face. Yun Shirshir blushed and stammered, "Ja." Only then did the man's lips curl into a satisfied smile. "Xiao Yichen, I think he's very skilled. Have you been training him since he was young?" Muyaja replied, "Yes, I sent him to the training camp when he was 4. The Cheetah Commando Unit was the top Special Forces unit. The training was not the usual harsh. The elite soldiers from the Cheetah Commando Unit could not be compared to the average soldiers. They were the elite soldiers in the truest sense. It was not an exaggeration to say that they licked the blood from the muzzle. Yun Shirshir could not help but click her tongue. No wonder that child's skills are so abnormal. You've been training him like this since he was young? The corner of Muyaja's lips twitched slightly. Did this woman just say that Xiao Yichen was abnormal? May I ask, then, what was Yun Tianyo's rank? Xiao Yichen was skilled in martial arts because he had specially guided the child to this path. He had put in a lot of effort into this child. What about Yun Tianyu, though? This child was the real terror. He was self-taught in the truest sense. He was simply a business genius. It was obvious that Yun Shirshir only treated him as an ordinary 6-year-old child. She did not even enroll him in a hobby course. This child, however, had naturally evolved. At the age of 7, he was already worth hundreds of millions. This was a real abnormality, all right? Compared to him, Xiao Yichen was obviously much more normal in a sense. Yun Shirshir did not notice the strange look in Muyaja's eyes and only rebuked him. The child is still so young, yet you're imposing so much training on him. This will hinder his development. A 6-year-old child should be at the age of being carefree. He should be given a free childhood. Xiao Yichen's talent in this area since he was young. Muyaja's voice. Yun Shirshir was clearly surprised by this. Muyaja glanced at her and smiled. If this child is properly groomed, she'll become a genius strategist. One was Yu, the other was Little Yichen. Things like genes were truly inconceivable. Yun Shirshir shook her head in a daze. I still think that Xiao Yichen's ability is too abnormal. It's really unscientific for a child to have the skills of an adult. Muyaja's brows twitched violently. This stupid woman. Compared to Yu, that little demon king, Xiao Yichen was no longer abnormal. In comparison, Xiao Yichen was practically a little angel. Xiao Yichen's skills were indeed frightening, but his mentality was not much different from that of a child his age. Yun Tianyo's EQ and IQ were no longer in the category of a child. Yun Shirshir had not seen the frightening side of Yun Tianyu, but Muyaja had experienced this child's skills. Chapter 650. The two of them were silent for a long time. Yun Shirshir couldn't help but ask. There was a doubt that had been lingering in her heart for a long time. She had always wanted to ask him for confirmation, but she never had the chance. After thinking for a long time, she still wanted to ask him. Mu Yaja, can I ask you a question? Yun Shirshir suddenly asked. Yes, ask. Yun Shirshir suddenly sat up straight and faced him, her eyes calm. You should know my identity. Mu Yaja was stunned, but he soon understood what Yun Shirshir was referring to. After careful consideration, he decided not to hide it from her, so he confessed. I found out about your identity 6 years ago. Yun Shirshir was shocked. She would never have thought that this man would have found out about her identity 6 years ago. How did you know about my identity? DNA. He looked up. Have you forgotten? 6 years ago, before you signed the surrogacy contract, you did a blood test. Your blood sample report shows that your blood type is MNSSU. This blood type is very rare, the rarest of the rare blood types. Yun Shirshir frowned slightly. Her blood type was indeed very rare in the world. But how could you be so sure that I'm Mu Qingqing's daughter, just based on my blood type? Yun Shirshir asked. There are many coincidences. Maybe it's just a coincidence. He looked at her and suddenly said, You look very much like her, very much like her. They were exactly the same. Especially her temperament and charm, it was impossible to replicate. If her photo was placed next to Mu Qingqing's, no one would suspect that they were not mother and daughter. Mu Yaja still retained the appearance of Mu Qingqing when she was young in the depths of his memory. When Mu Qingqing left the Mu family, he was already 5 years old and could remember things. Even if his memory of Mu Qingqing was very vague, her beautiful face was deeply engraved in his memory and left a deep impression. When he saw her photo 6 years ago, he felt that she was somewhat familiar. It was only when he saw Mu Qingqing's photo in Mu Sheng's study that his suspicions were confirmed. Therefore, he ordered the hospital to take Yun Shirshir's blood sample for a paternity test. The DNA database still has Mu Qingqing's DNA report. After comparison, your DNA matches hers perfectly. This answer completely confirmed his guess. Mu Yaja lowered his gaze and met her eyes. I've already found out that you're Mu Qingqing's daughter. So you already knew. Yun Shirshir smiled bitterly. She lowered her eyes slightly and slowly said, Mu Wanru stole my jade pendant. By a freak combination of factors, she took my identity and was recognized by the Mu Jia. Sadly, I only found out about this matter recently. From the moment she entered the Mu family, I thought that she was very suspicious. Yun Shirshir was a little surprised. Then, why didn't you say anything? Is it important? Mu Yaja suddenly asked. Who was Mu Wanru? Was her identity real? It did not matter to him. Why is it not important? Yun Shirshir smiled bitterly. If fate didn't play tricks on me, I would have been your fiancé from the start. They would not have met so late. She would not have met him in such an awkward position. Chapter 651. If not, they would not have met so late. She would not have faced him in such an awkward position. Instead, she would have stood beside him as his legitimate fiancé. Mu Yaja smiled at this. He could not help but ruffle her silky hair. This silly woman must have thought that if she were the one who had returned to the Mu family 15 years ago, she would have become his legitimate fiancé. Alas, he did not think so. In a way, if Mu Wanru had not replaced her, he might not have fallen in love with this woman. 15 years ago, he could only resist and reject Mu Qingqing. The young Mu Yaja harbored a strong enmity toward this woman. Mu Qingqing was the woman his father dreamed of and the woman his mother hated for the rest of her life. She was the woman his father cherished for the rest of his life. Mu Lianqing had given her his love for the rest of his life. His heart had always been with Mu Qingqing, and it had never left her. Infatuation and devotion, Jiang Yishan's initial anger and humiliation to her eventual despair and depression were all caused by this woman. In Mu Yaja's mind, Mu Qingcheng was undoubtedly a woman who had committed a heinous crime. It was this woman who, without any effort, made his parents' marriage disappear in name only. She was the main culprit. Hence, when Mu Sheng pushed the 9-year-old Mu Wanru in front of him and told him that she was Mu Qingcheng's daughter, his younger sister, and his future wife, Mu Yaja was furious. Mu Yaja looked at Mu Wanru with eyes full of disgust. He found her disgusting. However, for the inheritance of the Mu family's head, he did not hesitate to use her. He used her as the price to obtain the inheritance of Disheng Financial Group. It was only when he grew up that he understood. His father and mother's marriage was a sacrifice in the game between the rich and powerful. This marriage had nothing to do with romance or love. One had no choice but to marry, and the other had no choice but to marry. It was a transaction in name only. Mu Qingcheng was not a third party. On the contrary, she had always been a chaste woman. However, his father's infatuation with Mu Qingcheng had never changed. Only then did he erase his hatred towards Mu Qingcheng. Perhaps, if she were the one Mu Sheng had brought back to the Mu family 15 years ago, he did not even dare to imagine if she would become his pawn. Mu Wanru replaced her identity and entered the Mu family, but she also replaced her and became the chess piece in his hands. To replace her as the victim, fate seemed to have its own will. They had met at just the right time. Sometimes a freak combination of factors might not actually be a freak combination of factors. However, in order to meet her, he had probably used up all his luck. 6 years ago, Mu Wanru was found to be infertile. You should know about this, Mu Yaja suddenly said slowly. Yun Shishir nodded. Yes, I know. He lowered his gaze. She wasn't born infertile. When Yun Shishir heard this, she widened her eyes in shock and looked at him in disbelief. How can that be? I heard that the Mu family even invited the most authoritative medical research center in the country for this matter. Disheng Financial Group controls 40% of the country's medical market share. Mu Yaja's lips curled into an extremely sinister smile. That's why it's not difficult for me to forge a diagnosis. Chapter 652. What do you mean? She somewhat understood, but also somewhat did not understand. She always felt that Mu Wanru's pregnancy was very suspicious from the beginning to the end. Thinking about it carefully, it's very strange. 6 years ago, Mu Wanru rushed into the room and condescendingly threatened her. If not for her infertility, she would not be the surrogate. Therefore, she learned that the fiancé of the employer who signed the contract with her was infertile. How could a person who had been judged by various authoritative organizations suddenly get pregnant? It's extremely strange. It's simply impossible. Although there are miracles, Mu Wanru's miracle is too strange. Mu Yaja looked at her face that constantly changed and slowly said, her so-called infertility diagnosis was forged by me. Forged by others? Yes. What kind of power does this man have? In the capital, Mu Yaja's family business is big, and he can cover the sky with one hand. And Mu Yaja is a person who can turn clouds and rain with a wave of his hand, playing with a lot of carnage. To forge a certificate of infertility, for him, it's just a matter of moving his mouth. But why did you do this? Yun Shishir was shocked and asked the confusion in her heart. Mu Yaja's eyes slightly twitched, and the bottom of his eyes burst out a biting cold light. But he said lightly, because she is a chess piece. A chess piece must obey the will of the master. This is the duty of a chess piece. Yun Shishir was shocked. However, after thinking about it carefully, she was not surprised. Such ruthless and indifferent words from his mouth. She did not feel strange. However, she still felt confused. Chess piece? What chess piece? At the beginning, Grandpa ordered me to marry her. Mu Yaja hooked up his lips and smiled. If I get engaged with her, I can get the inheritance of the Mujia's lord. The Mujia is very big, but not everyone is qualified to enter the Mujia's main house. Only the Mujia's patriarch and the next generation's patriarch are eligible to live in the Mujia's main residence. At that time, his father had passed away. In such a large clan, he and his mother depended on each other for survival, and every step they took was filled with trepidation. The Mujia also has many factions within the Mujia. Both the direct descendants and the cadet branches were eyeing him like a tiger watching its prey. He was Mu Sheng's proudest grandson, and the most favorable candidate to be the next head of the family. Thus, there was no doubt that he had become a thorn in the side of those people. Many people wanted to get rid of him. Every day, every moment, passed with fear and trepidation. Therefore, at that time, the inheritance of the Mu family was undoubtedly a protective talisman for him and his mother. At that time, Grandfather was old and his health was deteriorating. After my father passed away, the position of the head of the family had always been empty. Many people were eyeing it covetously, and Grandfather had always been hesitant about whether he should settle the position of the head of the family. Mu Yaja said expressionlessly, "As for me, as the most powerful candidate, many people are eyeing me covetously, but I wasn't old enough then. In order to get the power of succession, I used marriage as a bargaining chip. Mu Wanru, on the other hand, is just a pawn for me to use. Do you think I'll have feelings for a chess piece?" Yun Shirshir's heart turned cold. This man, he was actually so cold and two-faced. He could actually use someone to this extent. If Mu Wanru knew that her infertility diagnosis was all used by this man, and she was the victim of his schemes, how would she feel? Chapter 653. She felt that Mu Wanru was really pitiful. She was so affectionate to the man she loved, but in the end, she didn't know that she was just a pawn in Mu Yaja's hands. Pitiful, sad, but she didn't feel sympathy. Wasn't she asking for all this? Yun Shirshir was shocked and couldn't help but feel that it was unbelievable. Then, if it was her who returned to the Mu family 15 years ago, would she also become a pawn of a man? Then she's pregnant now. Whose is the child? She asked carefully. Mu Yaja glanced at her and then said, "It's not mine." "Then whose is it?" "Alan, my personal assistant. You probably haven't seen him before." Yun Shirshir thought about it carefully for a while. Amidst her thoughts, she quickly realized that she might have seen this man before. That day in the bathroom of the restaurant, she had seen a man who had an ambiguous relationship with Mu Wanru. Although Mu Wanru appeared to be distant from him, from the man's behavior and expression, and even the way he looked at Mu Wanru, it was silently announcing the intimate relationship between them. How intimate? She didn't know. "I've seen that man. He looks clean and gentle. He's probably the Alan you mentioned. Just a few days ago, I met him in a restaurant." "You saw him?" "Yes." "What did she say to you?" Yun Shirshir's expression changed. "She told me that she's pregnant with your flesh and blood." Mu Yaja played with her fingers with interest, then suddenly looked up and glanced at her playfully. "So, you're jealous?" It was not a rhetorical question, but a statement. Because of jealousy, she put his number on the blacklist. "No," Yun Shirshir denied, stubbornly. Mu Yaja obviously didn't believe her, and there was a playful smile in his eyes. "Little liar, you're obviously jealous." "No." "Okay, no." He smiled indulgently, but did not intend to argue with this woman who did not mean what she said. She didn't expect this little fool to be so arrogant. He liked her arrogance. He liked everything about her. Yun Shirshir stared at his handsome face, and suddenly burst into laughter. She couldn't hide the smile on her face. "What are you laughing at?" Muyaja frowned and asked in confusion. "Our young Master Mu has been cuckolded," Yun Shirshir teased mercilessly. Muyaja's expression instantly changed, and his eyes suddenly became as cold as ice. "It doesn't count." "Huh." He suddenly stood up and grabbed her wrists, pulling her into his embrace. Yun Shirshir was caught off guard and fell into his arms. Muyaja lifted her chin and said word by word, "You are my woman." "She's not." Yun Shirshir was shocked, and her eyes widened. "So it doesn't count. I'm just joking, and you're taking it seriously?" Yun Shirshir covered her mouth and laughed. "Muyaja, you're really like a child sometimes." "No." Muyaja lowered his gaze and hugged her in his arms. Lowering his head, he pecked her fingertips and breathed out, "I'm your man." Yun Shirshir's cheeks blushed, and she pursed her lips without saying a word. "I'm your man, so I'll protect you." This was a responsibility that he had to fulfill as her man. She looked up and gently bit her lower lip with her pearly white teeth. Chapter 654. Her heart was deeply touched by his words. "Muyaja, are you not letting me into the Mu family to protect me?" "Huh. Why do you ask?" "Intuition, I guess." Yun Shirshir's eyes curved as her lips curled up slightly. "The Mu family gives me the feeling that it's a tiger's den. It doesn't feel warm at all. The family I want isn't like this. I won't let you step into such a scary place." Muyaja caressed her flawless face and could not help but touch her eyelashes. "I'll protect you and you well." Song Enya was sent to the hospital by a friend. The abrasions had already scabbed over, and the doctor cleaned and bandaged them for her. For an ordinary person, this was not considered a serious injury. However, for Song Enya, who had never suffered any injuries since she was young, this was probably the most serious one she had ever suffered. Along the way, she was depressed. When she thought of Yun Shirshir's heart-wrenching words, she felt extremely aggrieved. When Jiang Qiming and Song Yunqi saw her return, they wanted to invite her to eat dessert. However, when they saw her worried face and her limping, they looked at each other in shock. Jiang Qiming's heart ached, and she immediately went forward to ask, "Enya, what happened to you?" Song Yunqi also hugged her shoulders nervously and asked a few questions. Song Enya did not say a word. He lowered his head until he saw the bandaged wound on her knee. He scanned her from head to toe and saw that there were different degrees of abrasions all over her body. She was in a sorry state. "Enya, what happened to you?" Song Yunqi was a little anxious. "Why are you covered in injuries?" "Boo-hoo, brother." Song Enya's nose twitched. In the end, she could not hold it in and threw herself into his arms, wailing bitterly. "Enya, what happened to you? Why are you like this? What exactly happened? Tell me." Jiang Qiming was also anxious at the side. However, Song Enya just kept crying sadly. She curled up in Song Yunqi's arms and cried as if the world was about to collapse. Song Yunqi's heart ached, and she was at a loss. However, at this moment, she didn't know what to do with her precious little sister. Jiang Qiming was also anxious at the side. Song Enya had always been the princess of the Song Yunqi family. She was the apple of her parents' eye and was especially doted on. However, when Jiang Qiming saw her precious daughter crying wantonly in Song Yunqi's arms, she could not help but feel a knife in her heart. But she couldn't do anything about her daughter. Her daughter had always liked to stick to her since she was young, but for some reason after puberty, she became less close to her. No matter what happened, he rarely mentioned it to her. Perhaps it was because he had matured and some things were inconvenient to tell her. Therefore, as her mother, Song Enya rarely told her what was on her mind. Instead, she was very close to Song Yunshi and would tell her everything. After all, Song Yunshi was the eldest brother in the family, and he loved his two younger sisters very much. Song Enya was very dependent on him. Hence, Jiang Qimin gave Song Yunshi a look. The latter understood and lowered his head to Song Enya. Enya, tell me if there's anything. Brother will make a decision for you. Okay? Song Enya nodded slowly and said in a choked voice, Brother, I'm so sad. I feel like I can't breathe. She thought of Yun Shirshir's provocation in front of her. Every single word of his was still ringing in her ears. Chapter 655. She did not believe it. She really did not believe that Yun Shirshir was Brother Mu's beloved woman. She also did not believe that Xiao Yichen was her and Brother Mu's child. However, facts spoke louder than words. Yun Shirshir did not seem to be lying. The main thing was that she had carefully observed this woman's eyebrows and eyes. They really resembled Xiao Yichen's. Could it all be true? Years ago, there was a rumor that Mu Wanru was infertile, so the Mu family offered a sky-high price for Xiao Yichen to be a surrogate and not Mu Wanru's biological child. Could Yun Shirshir be that mysterious surrogate mother? Song Yunshi brought her into the room and sat on the bed. Under Song Yunshi's gentle persuasion, Song Enya finally calmed down a little. She relied on Song Yunshi as much as anyone else. Song Yunshi was the only one who could truly tolerate her unreasonable behavior. It was to the extent that she was only willing to talk to him about anything. Brother, do you think it's possible between Brother Mu and me? Song Enya clenched her hands tightly and asked carefully. Song Yunshi was furious. He suddenly stood up with a gloomy expression. I knew it was him. Other than him, no one else has the ability to make you so distracted. He paced back and forth on the spot. Suddenly, he squatted in front of her and held her shoulders tightly. He asked seriously, Silly sister, do you like that man so much? I've told you many times that it's impossible between you and him. Didn't I tell you to give up? I like him. I've liked him for more than 10 years. You're asking me to give up just like that? I can't take it lying down. Brother, she pouted. But you're related to him by blood. No one knows better than you whether it's possible between you and him. Song Yunshi slammed the table in anger. His sister had liked to stick to Mu Yaja since she was young. When they were young, she would follow him and call Mu Yaja uncle. But without the adolescent years of a young girl's heart, she felt that this uncle was constantly reminding her of their blood relationship. She deceived herself and changed the way she addressed Mu Yaja. It was as if this would shorten the distance between them. He didn't know what this girl was thinking. She was always talking about Brother Mu, Brother Mu. It was as if she had lost her mind. He was possessed by her. Irritated, Song Yunshi rubbed the hair on his forehead and glared at her in exasperation. The Missy was taken aback by his anger, but she persisted. So what if we're related by blood? I like Brother Mu and want to marry him. Nonsense. You're just messing around. Song Yunshi stood up angrily. Song Enya, you and I should call him uncle. You're his niece. It's fine if you don't call him Uncle Mu, but you keep saying that you want to be with him. Don't you know that this is indecent? If word gets out that you're doing this, it'll only embarrass the Song family. You'll embarrass me and our parents. Song Enya was indignant. I have many cousins who are together, and their children are all very healthy. This isn't considered indecent, right? What are you doing? Are you lying to yourself? Song Yunshi glared at her angrily and could not help but reach out to poke her head. Use your brain and think about it. If you marry your uncle, what will outsiders think? Chapter 656. You. Song Yunshi pointed at her and cried out in anger. Song Enya glared at her and pursed her lips stubbornly. However, looking at the tears in her eyes, Song Yunshi's heart softened. Let's not talk about this anymore. It's useless for me to talk about this. You'll figure it out sooner or later. Song Yunshi could only comfort herself and hope that her sister would completely give up on Mu Yaja one day. Even in the wealthy families, such marriages between cousins were not uncommon. However, the Song family had been a famous scholarly family in the capital for generations, especially during old Master Song's generation. They were one of the 10 founding generals of the country and had outstanding achievements. Their status in the capital was important and illustrious. Even the Mu family had to give the Song family some face. Therefore, the Song family was strict. If old Master Song knew about this, he would probably be so angry that he would expel Song Enya from the family. Song Yunshi naturally could not let her sister go astray and sit back and do nothing. I can't figure it out. I really can't figure it out. I thought Brother Mu doted on me the most. I thought he liked me too. Song Enya could not figure it out no matter how hard she tried. She was the person Mu Yaja had always doted on the most. Even Mu Wanru, his fiancé, he had never doted on her so much. In Song Enya's eyes, Mu Yaja was cold to everyone else, but toward her, he doted on her in every possible way. She thought that she must be very special in Mu Yaja's heart. However, tonight's incident had dealt him a huge blow. There's a reason why he dotes on you so much. Don't you know? Song Yunshi felt that she was hopeless. What's the reason? Because you look very similar to Annie Jiang. Song Yunshi sat in front of her and carefully looked at her face. From the photo, you look almost exactly the same. When Auntie Jiang passed away, almost no one could get close to Uncle Mu. Only you, because of your face, gave him great comfort. It is precisely because your face is similar to Annie Jiang's that he would pour his longing for Auntie Jiang onto you. The so-called love. To put it bluntly, you are just a substitute. Understand? Auntie Jiang, and I look alike. Song Enya touched her face in disbelief. She was obviously confused by Song Yunshi's words. Seeing her confused look, Song Yunshi was a little surprised. Didn't Uncle Mu mention it to you? He had heard about this from Jiang Qiming. Song Enya's face was very similar to Jiang Yishan's. When Jiang Yishan passed away, Mu Yaja locked himself in his room and did not come out. He did not eat or drink. In the Mu family, Mu Yaja's affection for his mother was deeper than anyone else's. The death of his beloved family member was a heavy blow to him. At that time, Jiang Qiming brought Song Enya to the Mu family to attend Jiang Yishan's funeral and mourn. That was the first time he saw little Enya. At that time, Mu Yaja, who was still young, stared at her for a long time. His face was expressionless as tears streamed down his face. He hugged her tightly in his arms. The more he missed Jiang Yishan, the more he doted on Song Enya. Song Enya was undoubtedly Mu Yaja's sustenance. He thought that Song Enya knew about this. Chapter 657. Song Yunshi sighed helplessly. That's because Auntie is the deepest pain in his heart. That's why he rarely mentions her. Song Enya was silent for a while before she suddenly asked, "Brother, do you have Annie's photo? What do you want to do? I'm curious. I've never seen Auntie's face before. After hearing what you said, I also want to see how similar I look to her." Song Enya said matter-of-factly. Song Yunshi pulled out a photo from the album. It was the only photo of the sisters Jiang Qiming and Jiang Yishan. Song Enya took a look. Indeed, her facial features were very similar to Jiang Yishan's. If others saw it, they would only think that she was Jiang Yishan's daughter. She stared at the photo in a daze. "So, The reason Brother Moo doted on her so much was because she had a face similar to Auntie's. Song Enya stared at the photo and could not help caressing her cheek. The corners of her lips curled into a sly, deep arc. She looked like Auntie Jom. Did that mean that at least Brother Moo wouldn't hate her? Did that mean that she still had a chance? That Yun Shirshir was nothing. Even if Brother Moo doted on her, it was at most a whim. Who knew? She might be smug now and abandon him not long after. However, Brother Moo would not abandon her. She loved him, even if it was because of ethics, even if she did not have a proper status. She did not care at all. Her face was the bargaining chip that she held tightly in her hands. She must snatch Brother Moo back from that woman. Song Enya pursed her lips tightly. She did not know that she had such a unique advantage in the past. So what if she was a substitute? So what if she was just a part of Brother Moo? No matter what identity or method she used, as long as she could stay by the side of the man she loved, she would endure any grievances and use any means. Song Yunshi did not know what Song Enya was thinking in her heart at this moment. She only lifted a corner of her skirt and looked at the bloody gauze with extreme heartache. "What's going on with your wound?" Song Enya returned to her senses and looked at Song Yunshi's worried and heartbroken expression. She immediately pretended to be aggrieved and complained, "Brother, someone bullied me." Song Yunshi was furious. "Who bullied you?" "Yun Shirshir. This is the woman who hit me." "Hit you?" Song Yunshi was so shocked that she stood up all of a sudden. Her handsome eyes were filled with anger. "Who is Yun Shirshir? Where did this woman get the guts to bully you?" Woo woo. Sobbing, Song Enya recounted what had happened that night. This time, Song Yunshi was completely infuriated. Normally, he couldn't even bear to lay a finger on his precious little sister. But now, she had been bullied outside and was even injured all over. How could he bear it? Song Yunshi clenched her fists and gritted her teeth in anger. "That woman is called Yun Shirshir, right?" "Brother, don't be angry. She seems to be Brother Moo's woman. Although she's quite arrogant, Brother Moo dotes on her, so she definitely has nothing to fear. You'd better not stand up for me. What if you offend Brother Moo? She's just a woman. Although the Moo family is powerful and influential, they still have to give the Song family some face in the capital. I don't believe that he'll offend the Song family for a despicable woman. Enya, don't be sad. I'll stand up for you." Chapter 658. The night was getting darker. Muyaja sent Yun Shirshir home. Along the way, Yun Shirshir was still immersed in the surprise just now and couldn't come back to her senses. Before this, Muyaja took her in a helicopter and flew around the island. This was her first time in a helicopter. It was very novel and interesting. Looking down at the night scene of the island from high up in the sky, the entire island was decorated with starlight. The colorful lights reflected on the surface of the lake, dyeing the surface of the lake into a beautiful color. At a glance, it was so beautiful that it was suffocating. Even though she was a little nervous when she boarded the helicopter for the first time, when she looked down at Hushin Island, she was deeply impressed by the beautiful scenery. No wonder it was said that all girls dreamed of going on a date with the man they loved in a Bali restaurant. No matter how big or small, it was so romantic that it made people feel as if they had entered a fantasy world. The night wind blew, and Hushin Island seemed to be surrounded by a sea of stars. However, the surprise was far more than she had imagined. When she walked down from the helicopter, under the cluster of fireworks, more than 10,000 roses almost covered the ground. She couldn't help but have the illusion that she was in a sea of flowers. In the past, when she was still in school, she often saw couples sending roses to each other. 1, 2, and even some boys sent a car full of roses to make the girls happy. At that time, She thought that sending roses was really tacky. Was there no other way to express romance? However, when she looked at the roses in front of her, which were like a carpet of flowers against the gorgeous fireworks, reflecting the dreamy colors, she was so surprised that she was suffocating. It turned out that a sea of roses was so beautiful. It was so beautiful that she couldn't come back to her senses for a long time. Tonight's date had more or less satisfied all of her desires for a date. Mu Yaja glanced at Yun Shirshir sitting in the passenger seat, who was holding her heart and lost in thought. He couldn't help but laugh. "What are you thinking about?" "Muyaja, do you know? I originally thought that sending roses was tasteless." Yun Shirshir turned to look at him, her eyes full of surprise. "But tonight, I understand why girls like roses." Not only was he surprised, but he was also touched. She was so touched that she wanted to cry. It was a kind of touched feeling of being doted on. It turned out that girls all yearned for romance. Even in the past, he felt that giving a woman roses was very unromantic. But if it was someone she liked, that would be great. He had wanted her to stay by his side for one more night, but Yun Shirshir insisted on going home to accompany Yu. Previously, she had told Yu that she had to film a few scenes overnight and would not be able to return home for a few nights. Yu's disappointed expression made her heart ache. Therefore, she wanted to hurry home and accompany him. The car stopped at the entrance of the villa. Yun Shirshir gets out of the car and sees that the light in the study is still on. His heart skipped a beat. She subconsciously raised her hand to look at her watch. It was already past 1 in the morning. What was this child doing? "Why aren't you asleep yet?" Mu Yaja also got out of the car. When he saw that the light in the study was still on, he was stunned. The two of them looked at each other. In the study, Yun Tianyu sat in front of the computer with a frown and a serious expression. His fingers flew across the keyboard from time to time as he typed a series of instructions in the program window. On the screen, in the black interface, lines of code instructions were constantly being refreshed. Chapter 659. He stared at the screen expressionlessly. He was so engrossed that he did not hear the sound of the study room's door opening despite his usually sharp senses. There was a suffocating atmosphere in the study room. Yu stared intently at the screen as she browsed through the data on it. Her pinkish but tense face was filled with killing intent, and her eyes were as cold as ice. However, after a short while, the data on the screen suddenly turned red. Yu's pinkish lips pursed slightly. As if victory was already in her grasp, her fingers danced on the keyboard as she typed continuously. Tap, 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 tap. The tapping sound of the mechanical keyboard did not seem to stop. Other than that, there was only dead silence. He held his breath as his eyes shone like torches. A hint of mockery flashed across his eyes. Shortly after, the data seemed to have collapsed and turned into a garbled mess. Shortly after, the screen flashed with the image of the Pentagon's home defense system collapsing. The Hurricane Group's logo appeared on the home page. The boy's tense expression faded as an elegant smile appeared on his face. "Humph, trying to fight with me? You're overestimating yourself." He closed the interface and pushed the keyboard away. He slowly picked up the cup of Ceylon black tea beside him and elegantly took a sip. At the bottom right corner of the window, Lee Hanlon's video conference window kept flashing. He clicked on it, and the computer screen switched to a video. Lee Hanlon's figure was exposed before the camera, and his face was filled with amazement. "Oh my God! Yu, do you have to be so fierce? The Pentagon's defense system is broken just like that." He was already dumbfounded when he witnessed the collapse of the Pentagon's heavy defense net. This child's ability was beyond his expectations. The Pentagon's defense system was very strict. However, in the hands of this boy, The system was completely destroyed in just a few minutes. Did he have to be so fierce? Did he have to be so heaven-defying? How could this child have such terrifying lethality? Lee Hanlon was so shocked that he could not speak. "Heh!" Yun Tianyu sneered, his eyes filled with disdain and contempt. "To me, the Pentagon's so-called defense system exists in name only. How dare they confiscate his cargo ship? Since when did the Pentagon dare to hack into his system, mobilizing the port to block his route and detain his cargo ships? This was undoubtedly an act of twisting a tiger's whiskers. In the history of the American government, presidents would always do a few stupid things when they were in power. These newly appointed government officials actually dared to provoke him? Good, very good. Since they didn't know the rules, he didn't mind teaching them a lesson. This transaction was extremely important to him. Although the North American market was not under his jurisdiction, this sea route was under his control. How dare they block his path? Courting death. Since they dared to do such a thing, they couldn't blame him for being ruthless. Now that he had breached the defensive net, the Pentagon had suffered a great loss. It would probably take some time for them to recover. When Lee Hanlon heard his arrogant tone, he was even more impressed. He even began to wonder if this child had a genetic mutation. Comparing oneself to others was indeed infuriating. He couldn't even type the Wooby input method smoothly. However, this child was already able to break through the Pentagon's defense net in a short period of time. Chapter 660. Yun Tianyu tapped his fingertips on the table. Just as he was deep in thought, he suddenly felt that something was amiss. On the screen, Lee Hanlon suddenly stopped talking. His eyes were fixed on something behind him. Yun Tianyu was a little creeped out by his gaze. "Where are you looking?" "Mommy." Lee Hanlon opened his mouth in a daze. "Mommy?" Feeling suspicious, Yun Tianyu followed his line of sight. Behind him, Yun Shirshir stood rooted to the ground with a look of bewilderment. Mu Yaja, who was standing beside her, had an unfathomable look on his face. "Mommy!" Yu was instantly scared out of his wits by the ghostly appearance of the two people. His heart almost stopped beating at that moment. He stood up straight from the leather chair in shock and subconsciously reached out to turn off the computer screen. His guilty conscience action made the expression on Yun Shirshir's face even weirder. Seeing this, Mu Yaja's smile gradually deepened. He was scared witless by Yun Shirshir's doubtful gaze. "Mommy, why did she come back at this time? Did she not say that she would be staying with the production team for a period of time and could not return home?" He counted the days. She should be back the day after tomorrow at the earliest. Why was she now? Also, when did the two of them enter his study room? Like ghosts, they appeared behind him without a sound and did not say a word. You patted his chest. He was scared to death. Did they have to be so scary? It was scary enough to scare someone to death, all right? He did not know when they came in and how much of his words they had heard. You glanced at Mu Yaja again and felt even more bewildered. Why was he here, too? "Mommy, why are you back at this time?" You changed from her kingly aura to that of an adorable little fairy. She reached out and tugged at Yun Shirshir's sleeve. Her tone was coquettish. Yun Shirshir stared at the changes in his expression. Suddenly, she asked in confusion, "Darling, what were you doing just now?" You looked nervous and played dumb." I didn't do anything." He glanced at Mu Yaja warily. However, he had an "I know what you're doing" expression on his face. His heart trembled. Mommy didn't know much about things on a deeper level, so she naturally couldn't understand what he was doing just now. But Mu Yaja was different. Even if he didn't understand, he should at least understand some of what he said. Little Munchkin was a little worried. The situation just now was so intense that he could not spare any energy to pay attention to the things around him. Therefore, he did not notice when they opened the door and entered the study. She didn't even notice the sound of footsteps. Really? Yun Shirshir saw that he looked extremely guilty and was a little suspicious. But I think I heard you say something about courting death. Yu was her gentle little god, her adorable little angel. How could he possibly say such cruel words? Yu's brain suddenly stopped working. After thinking carefully, he immediately explained, "No, Mommy, don't think too much. You was playing a game." "What game?" "Red Alert." Yu explained, "It's a strategy game." "Then why did you say the Pentagon? This is how the game is played. You can win if you occupy the Pentagon." Yu explained with a face full of cold sweat. She kept looking at Muyaja's expression. Chapter 661. The man's light gaze landed on him. Obviously, he understood what he was doing just now. This son of his was more impressive than he had imagined. He could actually break through the Pentagon's security system effortlessly. The student had surpassed the master. The father and son exchanged a look, each keeping a secret from the other. Yun Shirshir was skeptical. "Really? It's true. Mommy, Yu was really playing a game." Yun Tianyu pursed his lips aggrievedly. His innocent and naive eyes were like those of a Bambi fawn as he launched a gentle attack on her. Yun Shirshir was finally defeated, but she could not help reprimanding him. "You should pay attention to the time when playing a game. It's already so late. Didn't I tell you to go to bed on time every day? Mommy isn't home, so why are you fooling around?" Yu heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this. It seemed that his mommy believed him. Immediately, a pitiful expression appeared on his face. "I'm sorry, Mommy. I was wrong. I didn't do it on purpose. It's just that this round took longer than usual. You won't do it again. There won't be a next time." Yun Shirshir reprimanded him. Yu immediately nodded his head and pleaded, "Mommy, Yu is really hungry. Mommy will cook some noodles for Yu, okay?" With that, he pitifully tugged at the corner of her clothes and acted coquettishly. "I really don't know what to do with you." Yun Shirshir's heart softened. "I'll cook some noodles for you. Quickly tidy up the study room and go to bed after eating. Okay." Yun Tianyu immediately cheered and clapped his hands in joy. Yun Shirshir helplessly reached out to pat his head and left the study room to cook noodles. The father and son were left standing in the study room, facing each other. The gentleness and cuteness on Yun Tianyu's face instantly faded as he looked coldly at Muyaja. With an unfriendly look, he questioned, "Muyaja, why are you here?" Muyaja looked down at him and couldn't help but say, "Ungrateful brat." Yun Tianyu frowned, not understanding what he was talking about. Muyaja smiled wickedly and squatted down to look him in the eye. "When you lied to your mommy just now, I was kind enough not to expose you. Is this how you treat me the moment your mommy left?" "Humph, I'm not lying. I'm just playing a game." Little Munchkin shrugged innocently. Breaching the Pentagon's security program was indeed like a simple and low-level game to him. It was not even challenging at all. He wasn't lying, and he never lied to his mommy. He was a good boy. Yun Tianyu had a clear conscience. "Yes, I'm playing a game." He nodded earnestly. It was just that this game was beyond the average adult hacker's capability. Breaching the Pentagon in minutes. "I'm really impressed by you." Muyaja squinted at him. "You play with firearms?" Yun Tianyu's face darkened. This man was more capable than he had imagined. He could actually understand it. Are you in charge of North America and East Asia's air routes?" Yun Tianyu was completely speechless. His daddy was not someone to be trifled with, either. Muyaja sighed helplessly. "Your mommy is stupid and can't understand these things, but I can. My mommy isn't stupid. Yun Tianyu glared at him and retorted with a snort, "You're not allowed to speak ill of my mommy." Okay. Chapter 662. Then, why don't you call me Daddy? Mu Yaja looked at him, his lips curling into a playful smile. Yun Tianyu's gaze changed, and his face turned cold. You want me to call you Daddy? Yu Yu's eyes were full of contempt and disdain. You want me to call you Daddy? Dream on. Yu Yu proudly crossed his arms and raised his head with a pout. His eyes were full of childishness. This man was dreaming. He wanted him to call him Daddy. This person was not even married yet, so how could he change it? Was that even possible? Mu Yaja cocked a brow and nodded. Stubborn fellow, are you really not going to call me that? Dream on. These 3 words were a merciless rebuke. Yun Tianyu did not give him any face and coldly tugged at the corner of his lips. Mu Yaja shook his head, helplessly, looking troubled. Then, I can only report your situation to your mommy. Situation? What situation? Yun Tianyu squinted his eyes warily and sized him up. His brows furrowed in confusion. What do you mean by that? Mu Yaja patiently guided him. Little thing, guess what will happen if your mommy finds out that you're the boss of Liji Holdings? Yun Tianyu's good-looking brows furrowed slightly as he thought about it seriously. Suddenly, he realized something and coldly glanced at him from the corner of his eyes. He snorted and questioned, "Are you threatening me?" "Yes." Mu Yaja calmly nodded and admitted it. The corner of Yun Tianyu's eyes twitched violently as he mocked, "Mu Yaja, can you be any more shameless?" A certain man nodded seriously and shamelessly. "Yes, I dare. Do you want to try?" Yun Tianyu was stunned. This man was really shameless. He was more shameless than he thought. Yu Yu did not take his threat seriously and only sneered. "Mu Yaja, do you think you can threaten me with this? Regarding my identity, I'll come clean with my mommy sooner or later. It's just a matter of time. You can't threaten me." "Oh, is that so?" Mu Yaja glanced at him from the corner of his eyes and dragged out his last word. Hearing this, the little lad looked up and saw a flash of cunning in the man's eyes. His heart shuddered involuntarily. He actually felt a little guilty because of the smile in his eyes. Mu Yaja's eyes and his handsome face slowly inched closer to the little lad's eyes. With a sinister smile, his thin lips suddenly spouted these words, You guess. If your mommy, what if she knows that you dabble in firearms, hacking, smuggling, and oil?" Every word made Yun Tianyu shudder with fear and trepidation. Her watery eyes couldn't help but widen as she stared at him in disbelief. The sinister and playful smile on Mu Yaja's face was glaring in his eyes at this moment. Yu was completely speechless. This man, how much dirt did he have on him? How did he find out? Yu eyed him suspiciously. He was wary and suspicious. He clearly hid his identity very well. How did this man find out about his identity? You want to ask me how I found out? Mu Yaja seemed to have seen through his thoughts. Yun Tianyu pursed his lips tightly and did not say a word. Mu Yaja reached out and pinched his chubby cheeks with interest. Then, with a deep smile, he deliberately provoked him. "I'm not telling you." Yun Tianyu ground his teeth. Chapter 663. What a pervert! Yun Tianyu was infuriated by his repulsive look, but he could do nothing about it. Mu Yaja rubbed his chin and asked curiously, "When did you start playing with firearms? Is there a need for me to tell you? It should be last May when you officially joined Hurricane Group, right?" Mu Yaja blinked. Yun Tianyu was stunned again. This man was truly a pervert. He clearly knew everything, yet he still asked him, "I just want to see if you're honest with Daddy." Yaja saw through his thoughts again and explained. Yun Tianyo's face was stiff and distorted. Did he have the ability to read minds, or what? Could he tell what he was thinking with just one look? Yun Tianyu stared at his eyes suspiciously, trying to find some strange secret on his face. Yaja lazily said, "Stop looking. I don't know how to read minds." Yu's lips twitched. F***CK. No, I can't get angry. And I can't swear. If Mommy comes in and sees me freaking out, I'll be done for. Be a gentleman. Be elegant. Be a gentleman. Be elegant. You repeatedly reminded himself. Finally, he calmed down and smiled elegantly. Yaja, you know a lot. Yes, I also know that you're the head of East Asia's firearms market. Yun Tianyu involuntarily took a step back to maintain a safe distance from him. He originally thought that Yaja did not know his identity. Only now did he realize that he had underestimated this man. Black-bellied, the ultimate black-bellied. Poor Yu. If this man was really as simple as he thought, then who did he inherit his black-bellied genes from? His son was not simple, so his father was naturally not a simple character either. Yaja saw his guarded expression and smiled. I also know that you're the designer of Hurricane Group's arsenal. Luji Holdings' machine research technology can be used to manufacture missiles. Yun Tianyu could no longer hold it in. Where did you find out about this? Yes, I've been to your study room. Yaja smiled evilly. There are a lot of design drawings on your computer. In addition, there's also the research technology for quantum computers. Yun Tianyo's face drained of color. You've cracked my computer? Yes, Yaja gave a concise answer. That day, before flying to England, and before Yun Shusha returned home, he browsed through Yun Tianyo's study room. There were many design drawings hidden under the desk. Initially, he had thought that these drawings were for Luji Holdings machines and technologies. However, upon closer inspection, he was shocked to discover that these technologies could also be used in the field of missiles. Turning on the computer, he broke through the 3 layers of defense that Little Munchkin had set up. However, he couldn't break through the 4th layer no matter what he tried. He guessed that this system probably had 9 layers of protection, but with his ability, he could only break through 3 layers at most. But there was one thing he wouldn't say out loud. Otherwise, it will be embarrassing. It's a little embarrassing that I can't crack the defense system set by my son. Yun Tianyu looked at him deeply and thought that he had cracked his 9 layers of defense. He could not help but look at the man in front of him in a new light. You actually went through my confidential files. Chapter 664. What else do you know? Yun Tianyo's eyes were filled with wariness. Yaja raised his eyebrows wickedly. Isn't this enough? Arms smuggling and oil monopoly. This is a crime. I didn't expect my son to be the head of the arms syndicate. It's so scary. Yaja patted his chest as if he were truly frightened. Yun Tianyu was completely speechless. Pretentious. What an actor. He clearly looked very calm. All right. How contemptible. This man was too black-bellied. He was even more black-bellied than he had imagined. Yaja pondered for a moment before asking, Say, do you think your mommy will get a heart attack because of you being the head of the arms syndicate at such a young age? Yun Tianyu smiled disdainfully, his face full of contempt. Even if you tell her, she'll only believe me, and not you. After all, in her eyes, I'm the cutest and most gentlemanly baby. What if I have evidence? Yaja suddenly retorted. Yun Tianyu was startled. What? I'm sure your mommy will be very surprised if I have evidence of your identity. The evil smile on Yaja's face was glaring. Yun Tianyu gritted his teeth. thinking that this man was really abominable. If he could, he really wanted to tear apart this black-bellied smiling face. Your mommy is like a pure and innocent little rabbit. If she knows that her son is the head of the arms syndicate, won't she be frightened? Yun Tianyu pressed. How much do you know? Muyaja looked up at the sky. He put on an innocent look as if he knew nothing. However, Yun Tianyu knew that this man probably knew everything about him. No matter how unwilling he was, he had to compromise. With a frown and pursed lips, he asked, "What's the condition of confidentiality?" "Let me hear you call me Daddy." Muyaja raised his arrogant chin. The topic was back to square one again. Yun Tianyu's face flushed red. It was so hot that it almost emitted smoke. How embarrassing. If he did not call him that, he was really afraid that this man would tell his mommy about his identity. If mommy knew that he was playing with firearms and oil, wouldn't she be so scared that she would have a heart attack, as he said? She might even destroy him. He dared not imagine what kind of scary situation that would be. He originally intended to keep this matter a secret. He thought that Muyaja would not be able to find out his identity. He did not expect that he had underestimated this man. Yun Tianyu gritted his teeth and gave him a sidelong glance before turning around. With his back facing his father, he held the corner of the table for support and practically squeezed out 2 words through gritted teeth. "Dad." She was gnashing her teeth in humiliation. His voice was as soft as a mosquito, almost inaudible. Shouting these 2 words was already the limit for him. Muyaja, however, did not appreciate her kindness and replied in a harsh tone, "I didn't hear you." Yun Tianyu angrily turned around and accused, "You clearly heard it." "I didn't hear it." "Really? I swear." Muyaja raised his palm in a serious manner. Yun Tianyu gritted his teeth in anger. "Muyaja, do you believe that I'll blow up your Mu Group's headquarters?" Muyaja said, "Son, you're so cruel. I'm going to tell your mommy." "You only know how to complain." Yun Tianyu exploded in anger. "What can you do to me?" Muyaja looked at his little face, which was red from anger. It was tender, and adorable. He could not help but pinch it. Chapter 665. "Call me Daddy." "Daddy, your voice is a little soft." You clenched his fists and decided to bear with it. "Daddy, can't you be gentler?" "Daddy." When Yun Shirshir finished cooking the noodles and entered the study room, she saw this scene. She saw Yun Tianyu standing in front of Muyaja with downcast eyes and calling out softly, "Daddy, Daddy." Each call was softer than the last. Each call was cuter than the last. Muyaja's ears were very pleasing to the ear. Yun Shirshir could not help but be stunned. Since when did this father-son pair have such a good relationship? She cleared her throat and coughed a few times. Yun Tianyu glanced at her from the corner of his eye and saw her standing at the door. He immediately stood up straight with an innocent and adorable smile on his face. "Mommy." Yun Shirshir helplessly hugged her arms. "What are you guys doing?" Yun Tianyu's face inexplicably turned red when he heard this. Muyaja, however, answered blandly, "We're exchanging feelings." Yun Shirshir. "Yun Tianyu, how shameless." "Who's exchanging feelings with you?" "You're the one who's sticking to me." "I'm not exchanging feelings with you." "Who has feelings for you?" Ah. Yun Tianyu felt extremely humiliated. "I'll never play with this man again." He angrily stomped his feet and then looked at Yun Shirshir with an extremely resentful and aggrieved expression. His big, watery eyes were glistening with tears. He looked as if he was about to cry. Yun Shirshir, however, was completely in a daze. She did not understand that this child, who had always rejected Muyaja, was now calling him Daddy, with each call sweeter then the last. Did I see a ghost? Or Yun Shirshir suddenly glared suspiciously at Muyaja. Did you bully my baby? Her eyes were as sharp as a gun. Muyaja immediately raised his hands innocently and stood up. He pursed his lips and explained, I'm innocent. I didn't do anything. Both father and son looked at him pitifully and innocently. Yun Shirshir was stunned. He actually had a misconception. The father and son in front of him looked more innocent than the other. They were like two dogs wagging their tails and begging for mercy. They were quite cute, although this analogy was not very kind. But it was indeed very similar. Yun Shirshir suddenly couldn't help but laugh out loud. Seeing her suddenly smile, Yun Tianyu felt even more aggrieved. His expression crumbled as he softly whined, Mommy, all right, the noodles are ready. After saying that, Yun Shirshir turned around and entered the restaurant. Yun Tianyu turned his head to glare fiercely at his father. Muyaja lowered his eyes to look at him with a sinister smile. Are you satisfied, Muyaja? What did you call me? Muyaja knitted his brows in displeasure. Call me Daddy. Be good. I've already called you Daddy. Yun Tianyu felt that it was necessary to remind him not to push his luck. Muyaja could not help laughing when he saw his awkward look. The little guy was good in every way. He was just especially arrogant and awkward. Asking him to call him Daddy was akin to forcing him to swallow a gun. Was it that difficult? You did call me Daddy earlier, but my condition is that you call me Daddy forever. Forever? Yun Tianyu was shocked. He clenched his fists so tightly that smoke was about to rise from the top of his head. Muyaja, isn't your request too much? How is it too much? I'm your daddy, you're my son. Chapter 666. Hearing this, Muyaja's eyes turned into crescents. He squatted down slightly and held his shoulders. He quietly looked at the little lad at eye level. There was no need to hide the affection in his eyes. His thin lips parted slightly as a few words escaped his lips. Is it too late now? His tone and expression were serious. Yun Tianyu was slightly taken aback and stunned. Is it too late for me to dote on you, pamper you, and love you now? Muyaja could not help holding his little hand and gently massaging the back of it with his fingers. The little lad's hand was soft and fleshy. It was the softness of a 7-year-old child. His skin was as white as snow, and the blood vessels under his skin were clearly visible. His fingertips were adorably pinkish. It was hard to imagine that this pair of hands had created so many incredible legends. It was this pair of hands that had destroyed the Pentagon's defense system just a few minutes ago. His son was a genius. Even though he was only 7 years old, his achievements had attracted the attention of the world. It was as if a powerful soul was hidden in his small body. Incredible. This was his son. He should be proud of him. He should be extremely gratified to have such an outstanding and talented son. However, now, as he held his tender little hand, Muyaja felt a sourness spreading in his heart. His heart ached. His heart really ached for this child. No matter how outstanding his achievements were, there was no doubt that he was only a 7-year-old child. He did not even know how to imagine what kind of childhood he had. While investigating his background and identity, he also received a thick stack of medical reports. According to the reports, the child had spent most of his time in the hospital before he was 3 years old. Congenital heart insufficiency, asthma, past respiratory syndrome. Muyaja squeezed his little hand, the heartache in his eyes overflowing. Yun Tianyu was stunned for a moment before he slowly withdrew his little hand from his father's. It's probably too late, right? His brows furrowed slightly as he pursed his lips. I'm already used to it. He was strong enough now. He was strong enough to protect his mommy. The wealth and power he possessed were more than enough to protect this family. Other than mommy, nothing else matters to me. With that, he slowly turned around, took a deep breath, and left the study room. Muyaja's lips curled into a smile as he stared at the man's back. He could tell that the child yearned for his embrace so much. That day in the hospital, when she hugged him, her small hands carefully wrapped around his waist and nestled in his embrace. Although it was only for a moment, she was as obedient as a kitten that had retracted its claws. It was just that he was stubborn and stubborn. After all, 7 years of estrangement was neither deep nor shallow, but there was still a chasm between them. It seemed that it would not be easy to walk into his heart and make him accept him as his father. Yun Tianyu was holding a bowl of noodles in satisfaction when she entered the dining room. The moment she saw him, her gaze instantly changed, and her expression became somewhat complicated. Yun Shishir asked, How's mommy's cooking? Great. Yu clapped his hands and was not stingy with his praise. The noodles were not burnt, the noodles were not half-cooked, and the taste was not salty or bland. Her cooking had improved. Chapter 667. As long as he did not get food poisoning after eating it, he would like anything his mommy made personally. He would not reject anything. Yun Shishir also prepared Muyaja's portion. The man sat at the table and took a bite, too. His brows furrowed. This time, her culinary skills did not amaze him as much as the previous time. Moreover, there was a little too much salt, so his throat was a little sore. It was not up to standard. What he did not know was that the noodles Yun Shishir made the last time he tasted it was the best she had ever made. Yun Shishir noticed his frown and asked anxiously, "What's wrong? It doesn't taste good." Muyaja put down his chopsticks and opened his mouth. Just as he was about to give his review, he was acutely aware of a warning gaze on him. He followed his line of sight and saw Yun Tianyu clenching his chopsticks tightly. His piercing gaze seemed to be warning him that he would only accept 5-star reviews and not negative ones. If you can do it, then do it. If you can't, then don't talk nonsense. It was as if he were to give a negative review of this bowl of noodles, the little lad would blow up the Mu Group's headquarters in a fit of rage the next second. He was simply a mommy protector. Under Yun Tianyu's icy gaze, Muyaja cleared his throat and praised against his will, "Yes, it tastes good." Only then was Yun Tianyu satisfied. Yun Shishir raised her brow in surprise. "Really? It's really delicious," Yun Tianyu said. "My mommy is a 5-star chef." Muyaja's lips twitched. This flattery was not exaggerated at all. If such a standard was a 5-star chef standard, then all the hotels under the Mu Group should close down. Seeing his strange expression, Yun Tianyu's icy gaze pierced him like a ray. It was as if he was asking, "Why? Are you not convinced?" "Convinced." Muyaja hardened his heart, gritted his teeth, and forced himself to finish the noodles. Yun Tianyu, on the other hand, was quietly lowering his eyelashes. Be it his posture or his movements, they were incomparably elegant. He was a living example of an aristocratic little gentleman. It was as if he were not eating a bowl of home-cooked noodles, but was in a high-class Western restaurant. He had a natural aristocratic temperament. Just a bowl of noodles was enough to show that he was an aristocrat. He was not an ordinary person. When Yun Shishir saw that Muyaja had finished all the noodles, she was delighted. "Doesn't it taste great?" "Very good." Muyaja praised against his will. As he spoke, he took the handkerchief and carefully wiped the corners of his lips. "In our family, Yu's cooking is the best. If there's a chance next time, you should try it." Yu immediately said cutely, You only cooks for mommy." With that, he gave Muyaja a disdainful look. It was as if to say, "Give up. He only cooks for mommy and won't cook for you." This lad, he was too biased. Mu Yaja's eyes expressed his protest. Yun Tianyo's eyes expressed his protest. He refused to admit, accept, or carry it out. His protest was invalid. The two of them, one eyebrow and one eye, faced each other in the air. They did not speak and only communicated with their eyes. Yun Shusher watched them exchange flirtatious glances and was a little confused. However, she couldn't understand why the two of them were exchanging glances with each other. This was probably a special tacit understanding between father and son. After this incident, Yun Tianyu realized with regret that he seemed to have suffered a huge loss. He was actually led by the nose by this man. Chapter 668. Minyu walked up to him nervously and reported, "Chairman Mu, the company's internal network seems to have been attacked by a hacker. It's paralyzed." Paralyzed? Mu Yaja raised his eyebrows and asked suspiciously, "How could the internal network be paralyzed? Did the technical department deal with it?" "This hacker seems to be very powerful." The technical department is currently racking their brains trying to figure out how to fix the loophole." Loophole? He walked into the office and turned on his computer. His computer was the mainframe that connected to the company's network. Even if the hacker was very powerful, this computer should not have fallen. However, in the next second, he was slapped in the face by reality. On the screen, a program window suddenly popped up, and an explosive dance song suddenly rang throughout the office. Uptown Funk. On the screen, along with the music, countless chicks were twisting their butts and dancing on the screen. A few words slowly floated above their heads. "Idiot! Idiot! Idiot!" Then there was a mocking voice. "Ha ha!" Muyaja's face instantly turned pale. He leaned back slightly and rubbed his smooth chin. There was no need to think about who was the mastermind behind all this. On the screen, a few chicks with arrogant expressions were still waving their handkerchiefs and dancing. "Idiot! Idiot! Idiot!" Yun Shusher received a call from Lin Fengtian. At first, when she saw Lin Fengtian's call on the screen, she could not help but feel guilty. Last time, because of Mu Yaja, the crew had damaged a few pieces of equipment. It must have been a great blow to their vitality. She did not know if Director Lin would blame her. After all, this happened because of her. She really felt guilty. With an uneasy feeling, Yun Shusher picked up the phone. Lin Fengtian's excited and emotional voice came from the other end of the phone. "Shusher, you are my goddess." Yun Shusher was confused. "What do you mean, Director Lin? I don't quite understand." "You don't know?" While Lin Fengtian felt strange, he quickly recounted what had happened in the past few days. It turned out that after Mu Yaja lost his temper, he ordered the crew of the Green Apple to stop filming. The videotapes were also confiscated. The production crew had damaged several sets of equipment, and the film inside had not been exported in time. Lin Fengtian was extremely depressed. Forget about the few damaged equipment, but they were all shots of the campus. It wouldn't be a big deal if they didn't take any more shots when the time came. But the thing that made him depressed was that the scene in the music room that day was simply impeccable. It was exciting. If he could keep this scene, even if he took a few more punches, it would not be a pity. Now that the production team had been banned and the videos had been confiscated, Lin Fengtian had no place to cry. However, the previous night, Mu Yaja had given him an order to contact the film crew and told him that filming could resume as usual. As for the damaged equipment, Huanyu Corporation gave him a few new sets of cameras. Not only that, the videotape of the scene in the music room was also returned to him. Everything seemed to be back on track. Then what about Yun Shirshir? Ever since he found out that Yun Shirshir was Mu Yaja's woman, his impression of Yun Shirshir had changed. Mu Yaja, the crown prince of Dishing Financial Group, and the future head of the Mu family, was extremely powerful. Chapter 669. With Mu Yaja as her backer, she had everything, resources, and status. With the name Mu Yaja, no matter how influential she would only be a foil. However, Yun Shirshir did not do that. She was a newbie in the production team. She could have used Mu Yaja's resources, but she did not make it public. She gave the production team a satisfactory answer with her own hard work, diligence, and capability. She was a dark horse among the newbies. Lin Fengtian was even more certain about her. However, after this incident, would Yun Shirshir be able to join the production team again? Lin Fengtian was more concerned about this issue, so he carefully asked for Mu Yaja's opinion. The latter warned him coldly, "I have a piece of advice for you. I'm letting my woman join your show. You should have some foresight." Kissing scenes were still not allowed. At most, they were allowed to borrow the position. Bed scenes were out of the question, holding hands and hugging. Even if it was necessary for filming, there was a limit to it. This was considered a loosening of the rules. To Lin Fengtian, this was a great gift. Lin Fengtian excitedly said, "Thank you, Your Majesty." Mu Yaja asked, "I don't want to see what happened that day a second time." Lin Fengtian immediately explained, "Chairman Mu, you've misunderstood. This is filming, it's work. Everything is necessary for the plot." Necessary for the plot. Mu Yaja's voice deepened. "Lin Fengtian, I think you've wasted your time as a director. Can't you tell whether Gu Xingze is acting or revealing his true feelings?" After he finished speaking, he coldly hung up the phone. Lin Fengtian held the phone. His mind went blank for a long time before he sighed in a daze. He could also tell that Gu Xingze's reaction that day did not seem to be acting. He was a director, especially when it came to portraying pure love between a man and a woman. He had seen many top-notch actors. Gu Xingze's superb acting skills were beyond doubt. But no matter how superb her acting skills were, acting was still acting. Any professional filmmaker would be able to tell at a glance whether an actor was acting or revealing his true feelings. Lin Fengtian could tell that Gu Xingze was not acting. He was revealing his true feelings. His true feelings for Yun Shirshir. Mu Yaja also saw it, which was why he lost control that day. Lin Fengtian rushed to the set. Gu Xingze was rushing to film an advertisement. During the break, he mentioned this matter to Gu Xingze. Gu Xingze's expression changed when he heard this. "Director Lin, you worry too much." "I have no other feelings for Yun Shirshir." "Really?" Lin Fengtian was shocked. "I knew it. You're famous for being cold and aloof in the circle. If you said you liked men, I would have believed you. I really don't believe that you like Yun Shirshir." In a sense, Lin Fengtian was a real thick-skinned person. He took his words seriously. Gu Xingze's eyelids drooped slightly as he concealed the desolation that flashed across his eyes. Lin Fengtian couldn't help but praise him. "However, you really scared me that day. Xingze, your acting skills have improved so much compared to when you first entered the film industry. Even I was shocked by your acting skills during that scene in the music room. I couldn't help but get into character. Your eyes, the look in them, the emotional tension was too strong. If I didn't know your acting skills, I would have thought that you had feelings for Yun Shirshir." Chapter 670. The production team returned to normal. Lin Fengtian said that if it were not for her sake, the production team might have been disbanded. Yun Shirshir was stunned when she heard this. "Shirshir, no matter what, the production team is back to normal. When can you be there?" "Tomorrow." Yun Shirshir smiled brightly. The next day, She was ready to go to the production team. The main cast and crew were back in their positions. However, when Yun Shirshir joined the set, everyone's gaze on her became a little strange. Yen Bingqing and Yang Chang's eyes were filled with jealousy as they looked at her. Jealousy? Yun Shirshir was confused by these pairs of eyes and had no idea what was going on. Mu Shi also rushed to the production team in the afternoon. When she saw Yun Shirshir, her expression was a little strange. Yun Shirshir could not help it. "What's wrong with you guys? Why are you all staring at me with such strange eyes?" "Mu," she said embarrassedly. "Shirshir, sorry, you misunderstood me. I didn't expect you to come to the production team for filming. I'm surprised." "Why do you think so?" Cough. "It's because you're now the unspeakable goddess in the production team. Everyone wanted to worship her like a goddess." Yun Shirshir did not understand what she meant. What unspeakable goddess? What was all this about? Why was she so confused? Mushi found it funny. "Shirshir, you can do whatever you want in the production team now. Who dares to offend you?" Under Yun Shirshir's puzzled gaze, Mushi recounted everything to her. It turned out that before she came, Lin Fengtian had gathered everyone for a secret meeting. The topic of the meeting was mostly related to the reorganization of the production team, and one point was mentioned. Previously, in the production team, he noticed that many stage and stage managers, as well as many A-list assistants, were more or less finding trouble for Yun Shirshir. Yen Bingqing, in particular, used her status to bully newbies, assistants, and even extras. All of them had to give her face. Mu Shi, in particular, was ostracized by her. Yen Bingqing's incident was heavily criticized. Although he didn't mention her name, he gave her enough face. However, when Lin Fengtian mentioned this, the crew members all guessed who this person was. He was well aware of this. Yen Bingqing loved to ostracize newcomers and bully young actresses. In order to gain the most exposure, it could be said that she would do anything. Yen Bingqing, who was sitting in her seat, had an extremely ugly expression on her face. His face turned green. Lin Fengtian reminded them again. Although Yun Shirshir was a newcomer, she was his exclusive newcomer. Whoever dared to make trouble for Yun Shirshir would be slapping him in the face. Lin Fengtian had the highest status in the crew. Who dared to offend him? He was the famous Yama Scissorhands. Once, an important female lead in his movie tried to play the big shot with him, but he cut that role into a supporting role in a matter of minutes. No one dared to go against him. After all, he had Wanyu's higher-ups behind him. After this meeting, everyone was in awe of Yun Shirshir and no longer dared to bully her like they did in the past. They were much more polite. As her assistant, Mu Shi also benefited from this. In the past, she was the most ostracized in the production team. Now, no one dared to ostracize her. When Yun Shirshir heard this, her face remained calm, but she was secretly criticizing in her heart. Could all of this have been secretly instructed by Mu Yaja? Chapter 671. A lot of scenes were lost, so Lin Fengtian hurriedly took care of reshooting. On this day, the editor was busy arranging the footage. Yen Bingqing happened to pass by and walked in. She stood behind him without any change in her expression as she watched him arrange the footage. At the same time, she also wanted to see how she would perform in front of the camera. She was quite confident in her performance. However, it didn't matter if she didn't watch. When she saw that her scenes were much less, Yen Bingqing was stunned. Many scenes of her, and many of the supporting roles had been cut out during the editing process. Logically speaking, although she wasn't the main lead, she was still an extremely important character in this drama. Her scenes weren't any less than Yun Shirshir's. However, in these scenes that the editor had arranged, her scenes had been reduced by several times. There were many scenes where she and Yun Shirshir acted together, but all the scenes were given to Yun Shirshir. There were very few scenes that were given to her. There were many important plot segments, but her camera flashed past them with just a few strokes of the pen. It was clearly a very important scene, but all the scenes were given to Yun Shirshir. She estimated in her heart that Yun Shirshir's scenes actually occupied a total of 70% of the scenes. The more Yen Bingqing watched, the angrier she became. The anger in her heart was almost twisted. She had nowhere to vent her anger. Yen Bingqing clenched her fists tightly. Her sharp nails dug into her palms and pierced her skin. She bit her lip hard, turned around, and left. Not long after she left, Yen Bingqing hurriedly sent a junior assistant to inquire about it. The editor was almost done with his work. The junior assistant brought over some ice water to relieve the heat. She didn't report her background, but casually led him to this topic. "Sir, have you finished editing all these scenes?" The editor was grateful for her thoughtfulness. Now that his work had come to an end, he had the leisure to chat with her. "It's not done yet. It's just that the scenes that were selected will be re-edited later. I just took a rough look and realized that Yun Shirshir has a lot of scenes." "Oh, Director Lin picked all of these," the editor said ambiguously. The assistant had been working for Yen Bingqing for many years, so he was smart. After chatting for a while and completely dispelling Yen Bingqing's vigilance, he suddenly cut to the topic. "There are several scenes with Yen Bingqing and Yun Shirshir. Why is Director Lin only focusing on Yun Shirshir's scenes and throwing away Yen Bingqing's scenes?" The editor wasn't wary of the probing in her words. Instead, he said bluntly, "I was there when Director Lin chose these shots. I watched him choose them." "Oh, is there gossip? I say, why are you so nosy? Don't ask about anything in the production team." The editor lit a cigarette and narrowed his eyes. The junior assistant was quite pretty. She acted coquettishly in front of him. The editor couldn't resist and said bluntly, "Director Lin said that Yen Bingqing looks too old in some of the scenes. Moreover, she acted as a rebellious high school student like a white lotus." "Oh, I see." The junior assistant listened and noted it down in her heart. "Moreover, you didn't see those scenes with Yen Bingqing. I can't stand it." Chapter 672. But Yen Bingqing is a big shot after all. She's probably a big shot in a scandal. The editor put out his cigarette and couldn't help but tease. She was packaged by the public relations team behind her, hyping up the topic and snatching exposure. There was really nothing to say about those methods. That face of hers was truly stunning, but she doesn't have any acting skills. Plus, she doesn't have the talent to be an actress and likes to change the script on her own. If it weren't for the fact that Yen Bingqing has a strong backing and landed in the cast, Director Lin wouldn't have picked her for the role. What about Yun Shirshir? When the junior assistant heard this, she felt indignant for her boss. She wanted to use Yun Shirshir as a comparison. When the editor heard this, he winked at her and said, "You don't know, Yun Shirshir is now a goddess in the production team. You can't talk about her." "Why can't I talk about her? Does she really think she's a big shot? She's just a newcomer. Why can't I talk about her?" The junior assistant sneered unhappily. "You don't understand this. Yun Shirshir probably has some background. I've been with Director Lin for 9 years, and I've never seen Director Lin take so much care of an actress. Look at Gu Xingze. When he first appeared in Director Lin's film, he was also scolded badly by him. Yun Shirshir is different. Of course, this newcomer has acting skills and is capable. She's also more photogenic than Yen Bingqing. In Director Lin's eyes, she must be a treasure. Then what do you think of Yen Bingqing's acting skills compared to Yun Shirshir's?" The editor smiled contemptuously, but couldn't be bothered to comment further. He only spat out 3 words and asked her in return, "Can they be compared?" The junior assistant returned to the lounge and told Yen Bingqing everything she had found out. She added some details and told Yen Bingqing. Yen Bingqing was so angry that she flipped the table on the spot. This was too much. What did she mean by a white lotus? What did she mean by a vase with bad acting skills? What did she mean by comparing herself to Yun Shirshir? Could they be compared? That was too much. Yen Bingqing was so angry that her face was gloomy and ashen. She couldn't wait to rush in front of Yun Shirshir and tear this *TCH into pieces, so as to avoid being an eyesore in front of her all day long. She had just debuted, yet she was already able to star in Lin Fengtian's film. Furthermore, she was the female lead. Was she very proud of that? This was not the only thing she hated the most. What kind of *T luck did Yun Shirshir have? Not only did Lin Fengtian praise her so much, but she even managed to get a gold medal team like Qinzhou to join her. Over the past 2 days, Yun Shirshir's behind-the-scenes footage on Weibo had caused a lot of heated discussions. Yun Shirshir's behind-the-scenes photos of her wearing a school uniform once dominated the hot search list. Yun Shirshir's performance as Yin Xiachuan satisfied all fans of the original novel's fantasies. Even the author of the original novel reposted the post. "This is the Yin Xiachuan in my heart, invincible in youth." Qinzhou even made use of the resources in his hands to release press releases for several days in a row, wantonly promoting Yun Shirshir. In the press releases, he praised Yun Shirshir and did not forget to trample on her and Yangmi, using them as a stepping stone. This Qinzhou's packaging skills were top-notch, and his methods of promoting were top-notch. Even if the public relations team behind Yen Bingqing did not want to be outdone and also released press releases to trample on them, they could not withstand Qinzhou's overwhelming press releases at all. Why? It was because Qinzhou had close ties with almost all the major media companies. Back then, he had relied on Gu Xingza's golden resources accumulated over the past 10 years. Now, almost all of them were spent on Yun Shirshir. He spent a lot of money. Chapter 673. Putting this aside, the main point was that with Qinzhou's status and backing, who would dare to go against him? Yen Bingqing's team had just released a few articles about Yun Shirshir when Qinzhou ordered his men to replace them. There was no room for negotiation at all. Yen Bingqing, Yang Mi, and the rest were furious, but they did not dare to say anything. Offending Qinzhou was undoubtedly courting death. Qinzhou and Gu Xingza had held Huanyu's shares in their early years and had a seat on the company's board of directors. They were also part of the company's upper management. If they offended the company's upper management, they could be banned or frozen in a matter of minutes. Yen Bingqing did not dare to go against Qinzhou. Hence, she allowed the manager to consume her exposure to boost Yun Shirshir's popularity. However, now that even her scenes with Yun Shirshir were edited to such a ridiculous state, Yen Bingqing could no longer sit still. She was too aggrieved. She had never been so aggrieved before. This Yun Shirshir was so capable. A newbie was being held in such high regard. What capabilities did she have to make Qinzhou support her so much? However, despite Lin Fengtian's repeated orders, she did not dare to make things difficult for Yun Shirshir. The bird that pokes its head out will be shot. Many people were jealous of Yun Shirshir, and there might even be someone who would teach her a lesson. However, it was difficult for her to vent her anger. She could not offend Yun Shirshir, but she could not vent her anger on her assistant, right? Hence, during lunch, Yen Bingqing accidentally splashed the boiling hot tea in her cup onto Mushi. Mushi screamed in pain. When she lowered her head, her arm was instantly scalded red by the tea. The sun was scorching hot now. The scorching sun shone on her body and arm, causing her to cry aggrievedly. She hugged her scalded arm and bit her lower lip tightly. She glared at her with tears in her eyes, but she did not dare to say anything. Yan Bingqing looked down at her from the corner of her eyes and said with a fake smile, "Oh, I didn't do it on purpose. I'm sorry." After he finished speaking, he didn't look at her anymore. He even said regretfully, "If you hadn't bumped into me, my cup wouldn't have flipped over. AI, my precious tribute tea, is really pitiful." It was a simple sentence without any sense of guilt. It didn't sound like an apology at all. It was as if her scalding was not worth mentioning at all. It was not even comparable to the tea leaves that she had spilled. She felt extremely aggrieved. She didn't even bump into her. She was clearly the one who had poured the boiling hot tea over him. "How dare you slander me like this?" She knew very well that this Yan Bingqing was venting her anger on her because her limelight had been stolen by Yun Shirshir. This kind of thing was very common in the production team. Moreover, this was not the first time Yan Bingqing vented her anger on her assistant. The strange thing was that she didn't take a detour when she saw Yan Bingqing. Mushi's tears kept falling. Yan Bingqing walked to her side and lowered her head with a smile. Her voice was extremely cold. "Go back and tell your boss not to go overboard. Does she really think that she can be unrestrained just because she has Director Lin's support?" She raised her head with